connection is. We haven't done anything to the internet, you fucking retard. How the fuck am I supposed to fall for these messages? Why do you program them? This way you'll know if. Apparently not, because there's nothing wrong with the internet, you fucking idiots. Jesus Christ, what would I know? I'm only the one using it all the time. What did you do with my fucking and my music? What the fuck, man? What's wrong with you people? Well, it was just to cover while I was. Money's in the box, so I'm picking on the knife, coming to finish. No move, nothing to ask. If one bad move, then you get your ass kicked. You're not in the mood, so I teach that you see the eyes of the wolf, and I hope you see it. This is not somebody doing this, but my bookmarks get renamed. Two bookmarks is all not available. It's not useful. I need to rename the book. More like a nightmare, you are the victim. How the fuck? No, upstairs coming in talk. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, upstairs coming in talk. Just black coffee, nothing to talk about soda, black coffee. It says! Fuck you, I'll just type it in here. See? China plus South Africa, yes, that's good. I don't know what's in the next one. Is this a G19 shot? China plus. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. It's just the very first track in the show. Yeah. China plus Sierra CN / South Africa. The life that I live, man. F4TG. Yeah, 7575 selling drugs as long as we still alive. Yo, my blood type is straight killer nigga running this house. Kidnap a faggot ass nigga who be running his mouth. It's the avoid exchange of documents. Avoid group work. Okay, I'm not there. More documents in the group
Shot
work.
fly past in the car, we shoot the glass of the cockpit. And run up on you, see you walk, and leave you stretched out on the concrete like you hugging the floor. I'm a thug nigga, hair still nappy, hands still baggy, and keep it sharp in case niggas try to get at me. Fuck I look like, shooting fair ones and fist fighting. I smoke too many cigarettes, nigga, I'd rather light him. Cause I ain't got the lungs for that sweaty shit.
Cigarettes lead to gun violence, black and blood violence. You gotta get rid of these cigarettes.
I let my still die, fully loaded whip, battleship like it's Bismarck. Lock you done did it again. Fuck a one shot, you know me, I'd rather hit you and your friend. For that stick talk, you oughta get it 2 times more. Now I'll rip the 6. It ain't 2 + 4.
No, but it is 604.
Its forces in Afghanistan. French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian says the U.S. decision represents a challenge to multilateralism and judicial independence. The ICC in March authorized an investigation into possible war crimes in Afghanistan, including those that may have been committed by the U.S. military and the Central Intelligence Agency. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has signed into law a sweeping package of police accountability measures that received new backing following protests of George Floyd's killing. The measures were approved earlier this week by the state's legislature. The laws will ban police chokeholds, make it easier to sue people who call police on others without good reason, and set up a special prosecutor's office to investigate the deaths of people during and following encounters with police officers. Hong Kong Ocean Park has reopened to visitors after more than 4 months of temporary closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Visitors are required to wear face masks to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. They also have to reserve spots in advance due to a reduced capacity of 9,000. Ocean Park's Executive Director of Operations and Entertainment, Timothy Ng.
We understand that there is a high demand, and as a matter of fact, that we need to comply with the requirements, from the government to enhance the hygiene measures, and also to implement the social distance management to make sure that the guests and the staff and also the animals, they will be safe when we reopen the park.
The park will only gradually increase capacity in late July. That's the news. I'm Wenjie.
No, that's the whole news, right? That's it. Wow. The animals are fine. Everybody's mad about George Floyd.
Telling the
Who's
story,
like the association I'm mentioning?
bringing the news you want to know.
Why did they do that?
Welcome to World Today, the panel discussion with me, Guyana, in Beijing. The presidential race in the United States has begun with former Vice President Joe Biden formally securing the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. However, with a surging number of COVID-19 infections, economic recession, and national upheaval over police brutality and systematic racism, the presidential campaign, like no other, has become more complicated. So how will today's political climate affect the November election? And what do protests against the police brutality mean for President Trump's re-election bid? To answer these questions and more, let's bring in our guests for today's panel. On the line we have Dr. Max Skidmore, Professor Emeritus of Political Science, University of Missouri, Kansas City, and Dr. Paul Fabrizio, Professor of Political Science, McMurray University. In the studio, we have Liu Kun, CRI's former correspondent in Washington, D.C. Thank you all for joining us. Good to be on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So let me start with you, Professor Skidmore. Within 6 months of the next presidential election, we see the surging number of COVID-19 infections, economic fallout, and the phenomenal response to the police killing of George Floyd in the United States. So how do you assess the impact of these events and movements on the November election in general?
Well, there's no question that it will have a significant influence on the election. We have now a combination of circumstances that is unique. It's almost as though we have the Great Depression and the Civil Rights Movement simultaneously, along with a health threat to every citizen from COVID-19, the worst record in the world, actually, all of which has occurred under the watch of the sitting president. There's a great deal of attention to the work by a Princeton University professor, Professor Omar Vaso, who studied the demonstrations and the police riot in 1968 at the Democratic National Convention. He concluded that those circumstances assisted President Nixon's race for president. It is similarly likely, I think, that the unrest in the country will assist Vice President Biden's race for president. President Nixon, you remember, was not president at the time of the election 1968. Donald Trump is president at the moment, and all of these things have occurred on his watch, and it's unlikely that it could have anything other than a detrimental effect on his race.
Professor Fabrizio, how is all of this affecting the race, in your opinion?
I certainly agree with Professor Skidmore. They're all going to have an effect. At the same time, we need to remember that President Trump, from the moment that he got elected president, really has not reached out to expand his political base. And what he has done is he has focused pretty much all of his policies, all of his campaign ads on reinforcing his base. So he hasn't made really an effort to go out and attract other people who might have been opposed to him before. And President Trump was elected with the minority of the votes in 2016. He has never achieved an approval rating of a majority of voters. And so therefore he's going into this election season with minority support. And so while there's all this churning that's taking place in the country, we need to remember that President Trump is also a minority elected president and suffers from minority support. So he's already in a weakened position going into
That's
this
a bad
election.
thing. Minority
Liu
support.
Kun, no doubt, this event and movement bring more uncertainties to the November election. So, what's your take on this impact?
I certainly agree with what these two professors have said about the huge impact and also the influence the current economic depression in the United States as well as the racial violence in the country could have on the election. But one thing I need to remember to remind everybody here is that I think with American elections, the issues of importance sometimes change as the political climate changes in the country. I remember before Super Tuesday in this election, people were still talking about healthcare. And before that, people were still talking about healthcare, and then this huge assassination of the Iranian military leader happened. And during a research done by Pew Research Center, people viewed that foreign policy, the importance of foreign policy, actually rose above other issues like gun violence in the country. So it really, I think, it depends on how things will go in from now until November the 6th, how things will happen, what kind of things will happen, and how both Joe Biden and also President Donald Trump will react to these things. And judging from what already happened in the first few months of 2020, with still 5 months until the election, a lot could happen. And we need to wait and see, how things will change from here.
The issue of importance now has shifted to the national unrest. So, Professor Fabrizio, a recent poll finds that 80% voters believe things in the country are out of control. So, how does this perception fit into President Trump or Joe Biden's campaign?
Well, it makes it really difficult for President Trump because traditionally presidential elections, when you have an incumbent president like President Trump, they turn into referendums on the president. So the question that voters really look at is, do I want this person representing me again for 4 years? President Trump and his attitude, beliefs, policies are not a surprise. People know how he behaves. So this election is really a referendum on President Trump. And so when you have 80% of the country uncomfortable with where things are going, that has got to be a scary number for the incumbent president. And so he has to deal with that, and so far I'm not sure he has. Joe Biden, on the other hand, with that 80% who are discomforted with what is going on, needs to provide a calming thing saying, hey, this isn't the way it should be. We need to get back to more of a normal thing. And so Joe Biden has to project a calmness and a comfort with the future. But in the end, this election is probably really just going to be about President Trump. Do the American people want President Trump for another 4 years?
Professor Gilmore, we heard different voices stating that, for example, the unrest brings political advantages to President Trump, or Biden is benefiting from people's anger. So who do you think might turn the protest to his political advantage?
Well, I agree with Professor Fabrizio. Certainly the amount of civil unrest in the country has occurred on President Trump's watch, and he is likely to get credit or blame for the circumstances that caused it, particularly in as much as he does not attempt to unify, does not attempt to win people to his point of view. He simply proceeds to beat his opponents over the head and whip up outrage from his supporters. But his supporters aren't numerous enough by themselves to carry him to victory. That having been said, of course, it is true that 5 months is almost an eternity in politics, and things can change drastically. But the chances of them improving dramatically in the next 5 months, I would argue, are quite slim. The chances of the circumstances getting even worse are much more likely.
Liu Kun, do you share the same stand?
Yes, I do, and I think we have seen what both Joe Biden and Donald Trump have done during this whole George Floyd case. Trump has visited the church. He had talked to Floyd's family members over the phone, and Biden flew out to Texas. To meet people, in person. Certainly, you can argue that Biden's message is more about unification, whereas Trump is more about we have to be tough on this violence. What I can say now is that the fight is real between the two, and both are trying to handle the crisis very carefully so that it will not backlash against them.
We have to be tough for President Trump. So, Quinn, people say President Trump is taking a sort of 1968 Nixon style law and order. So, has the tough on crime style given him any advantages on his re-election chances?
I think we kind of already had the answer in the first question when the professor reminded us that during 1968, during that election, Nixon was running against an incumbent, and now Trump is the incumbent. So during 1968 election, Nixon was the former vice president, and he was running against the incumbent vice president Hubert Humphrey. And law and order is something about I pledge you law and order, and that's the message that people wanted back then. But now, as the professor mentioned, it's like a lot of the violence happened under your watch, President Donald Trump, and you are saying law and order in capital letters during multiple tweets at different days. I think it's really hard to convince people that this happened under my watch, but I will get everything back to normal.
Professor Fabrizio, how do you assess the law and order style from Trump? Are voters buying this?
If you look at the president's approval rating, there has been a steady decline in his approval rating, beginning with the coronavirus crisis and continuing through the protests. So I think you can make an argument that it is not an effective technique right now. Now, again, there's an awful lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of different things that people are paying attention to. The president's law and order message is really geared towards two audiences. One is the president's base, and just reaffirming that he cares about them, he cares about their issues. The other target for the audience is a group of people that the president has really lost over the last couple of years, and those are white suburban voters. And I mean, women, white suburban voters, and there has been a gradual decline in their support for President Trump. 2018, it was very obvious that a lot of those voters, these white women supporters who live in the suburbs, they said, we'd rather vote for a Democrat. But at the same time, those voters find that law and order is very important to them. So the president is trying to appeal to them in addition to supporting his base with his law and order stance. But again, if you look at the public opinion polls right now, it is not working.
Professor Skim or Professor Fabrizio mentioned the public opinion poll because we know a recent CNN poll shows Biden has taken a 14-point lead over Trump as the protests continue around the United States and also the COVID-19 pandemic continues to take lives. Trump does not like what he is seeing in those poll numbers. He made that clear on Twitter, and his campaign is demanding CNN retract and also apologize for a recent poll that showed him well behind Biden. So do you think he can reverse the trend?
Well, I learned to fly an airplane years ago. And when you are flying at night, if your engine quits and you have to land, the joke was that you look at the land, and if you like it, you go on and land. If you don't like it, you turn off the landing light. So you don't see how bad it is. And that's exactly what President Trump appears to be attempting to do.
It's not quite Vietnam,
one of
but it's
the
real
most
close,
significant polls of all were the elections of 2018, which were massively in favor of the Democrats.
With the Canadian
and
government,
the
we're here to
political
help.
climate, if anything, has only become stronger in favor of the Democrats since that time. I certainly agree with Professor Fabrizio and his comments.
That's a very good metaphor. So, Professor Fabrizio, Biden, on the other hand, has acted differently from Trump. He flew to Houston for a private meeting with Floyd's family, and he said he will continue highlighting concerns about the needs of the police reform and to deal with the broader issue of racism. So, will this move help him win more votes?
And I think that's the starting point. I think what former Vice President Biden has to do is make sure that his support among African American voters continues to be strong. So he takes certain actions, such as you've described, including visiting the Floyd family, as a way to shore up that support. He has to build on that, and there seems to be increasing pressure on the part of Democrats and African American Democrats to have Biden choose as a vice president an African American woman. There's more and more talk about Kamala Harris, the senator from California, being that vice presidential choice. So Biden has to take certain actions to keep his support, and then to build on it, he's setting up the stage where he's going to probably have to choose an African American as his vice president. If he doesn't do that, he probably is going to put himself in the position where he's going to disappoint his African American supporters, and the goodwill that he has built up over time could really hurt him. So in a certain sense, I would argue that Biden is basically constructing a trap.
I'm against
that he has no choice but to choose an African American vice president. But again, as your correspondent said, there are so many things that can happen in this election cycle. It's been an amazing one so far. So it's very possible that there could be new events between now and August 1st when Biden announces vice presidential candidate.
Well, Professor, I'd like to jump in here. It seems to me that Biden does not have a very I wouldn't say close, but it appears really hard for him to reach out to African Americans. And I think he is, like what you said, it's hard for him to come to the realization that he has to choose an African American to be vice president, and his message doesn't really resonate with African American voters. And his campaign almost died, but it came back to life in South Carolina in this election when Representative Jim Clyburn from South Carolina really helped him. So I think this George Floyd case is really hard for him to deal with. He's trying very carefully, but it's not an easy task for him.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all. I think it is hard, but at the same time, Joe Biden went into this election counting on his African American support. And there's certainly issues with his campaign and his message, and he sometimes gets the sense that he's being pulled in directions he doesn't want to go. But at the same time, you go back to the primary campaign, and he was the one who had more support among African Americans than any other candidate, including the African American candidate. Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, both realized that they could not get that African American vote away from Joe Biden. So there is some discomfort, but there's also comfort, historic comfort, based on Biden's service as Barack Obama's vice president.
Let me bring in Professor Skidmore. Yes, please. What's your take on this?
The United States, because
I
people
think
people in China
correct.
Want to know this shit.
The American people know both candidates. They've seen Joe Biden for years and years,
want to know what's on
and they've seen Donald Trump for
that's not about color. That's Americans in general.
And they like Joe Biden. They think he's a warm, decent person if they agree agree with him, fine. If they don't agree, they still think he's a one decent person. They tend not to like Donald Trump. His fervent base can find their outrage by his tweets and his bombastic statements during his rallies. But he's not a warm person, and I don't know of anyone actually who likes Donald Trump. And the two campaigns reflect that. Joe Biden appears with the family of George Floyd and is empathetic, and they accept him. Donald Trump plans a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the scene of one of the greatest race riots, if not the greatest race riot in American history, that resulted in 300 black deaths in 1921.
Oh, riots like, oh, the animals were crazy.
To take place on Juneteenth, the 19th of June, which is a holiday among black Americans.
Is that why it's in this fucking day? I didn't know that.
Figuratively to poke his thumb in the eyes of our black population. And he's making no effort to reach out.
Coincidentally, that agenda book was printed in China, sold at the dollar store.
And that may, again, intensify his support among his base, but his base is simply not large enough to elect him. I think that the black community in America is one of Joe Biden's strengths and one of Donald Trump's weaknesses.
Professor Skidmore, it's also not easy for President Trump, even from his own party, without a growing chorus of Republicans. And military leaders have condemned Trump and stated their stance. Former Secretary of State Colin Powell has announced he's not supporting Trump's re-election, and former President George W. Bush and some other prominent Republicans won't be voting to re-elect Donald Trump. So will voices of dissent from party leaders translate to Republican grassroots, where Trump retains overwhelming support?
Yes, I think that's significant. Occasionally in American politics, you will have a faction of a candidate turn against him. You have that now with a few prominent Republicans turning against Donald Trump very vocally and very visibly. You don't have that phenomenon with regard to Joe Biden. There is not any significant Democratic contingent that is opposing Joe Biden. And again, Trump is explicitly a defensive figure, and Biden is doing everything, and rather skillfully doing everything to unify not only his party but the country, and to reach out to all people, as he would put it, I think, people of goodwill.
Professor Fabrizio, will more Republicans break with Trump and make a difference at the polls?
I'm not sure that more will break away enough to make a difference at the polls. If you look at the people who have said they're not going to vote for Donald Trump, for the most part, they didn't vote for him in 2016. So, therefore, I mean, you're thinking of the George W. Bushes, the Colin Powells, they did not support Trump a couple of years ago. So far, right now, I think there's a discontent with Donald Trump among some Republicans, but I think it's limited right now. I thought probably the most significant thing was the general yesterday apologizing, General Milley apologizing for his participation in things. That was a step beyond where previous people have been willing to go. And if that is going to be supported, if other Republicans are going to now jump on that and separate from Trump, then I think Trump's got a real problem. But so far, we haven't seen that anybody else jump on that yet. I do a radio show here in West Central Texas. And this is an area that supported Donald Trump 80% to 20% in 2016. So it's a highly Republican Donald Trump area. And when I talk about these people who are, in essence, deserting Donald Trump, the response from the audience is they're part of the deep state. They never liked Donald Trump anyway. It doesn't change our support for Donald Trump.
Mm.
So I need to see a bigger movement on the part of Republicans against Donald Trump for me to believe it's going to be significant. What I see, and this is building on what Professor Skidmore said, what I see that Donald Trump has a small but significant number of supporters, but that supporters are enthusiastic.
Thanks, everyone. That's all the time for the first half. For the second half, we'll continue our panel discussion. You are listening now to Broad Today with me, Guyana. Stay tuned.
Hello, this is Michael John. Greetings from Los Angeles of the Golden State of California. Thank you today for making me part of your team. I truly enjoyed the debates we had and look forward to many more in the years to come.
You might have joined the gang, but it wasn't us, bro.
Hello, I'm Gloria Seed, First Secretary of the Embassy of Chile to China. It's been an honor taking part on your show and telling you about the relationship between Chile and China. Wishing you all the best.
Whoever you are, whatever you are interested in, you can always find Today, covering the news you care about. Global headlines, business analysis, the latest developments in education, or the scores from the pitch. Get a deeper understanding of the news that matters most with the Today Show.
Whichever one's on the pitch. Oh, who's this?
You're listening to the panel discussion of Broad Today. We've been discussing the presidential race between President Trump and Joe Biden amid the pandemic, economic recession, and national unrest. And how will these events and movements affect the November election? We are joined by Dr. Max Skidmore, Professor Emeritus of Political Science, University of Missouri, Kansas City, and Dr. Paul Fabrizio, Professor of Political Science, McMurray University, and Leo Quinn, CRI's former correspondent in Washington, D.C. So, Quinn, we've been talking about the top military official General Mark Milley has apologized on Thursday for taking part in President Trump's walk across Lafayette Square for photo opportunity. So do you think this suggests a shift within the military side or the Republican Party?
Well, it was quite a thing to see General Mike Milley to appear in public and say, I want to apologize for this thing. The thing about the Republican establishment with Donald Trump is that I think a lot of reporters remember covering the 2018 midterm election, what people call the Trump phenomenon. That's as long as Trump campaigns for this Republican candidate, he will, she will win. I remember the race in Florida, Florida governor as well as Senate, where for the governor position, Andrew Gillum was competing against Ron DeSantis, and for the Senate race, Bill Nelson was competing against Rick Scott. And Trump campaigned for Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott, and look who won, the Republican candidates. So I think the Republican leadership under the current Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell chose to maximize what Trump can bring to the party right now, that's votes. And they pretty much stay silent on issues that are of critical importance to American people, like other issues like the Mueller investigation, impeachment, etc. So Colin Powell and George W. Bush, they came out and said that I'm not going to support Trump's re-election. But I agree with the previous professor said, I think I need to see more prominent Republicans, especially the Republicans that are in office right now, to speak out on this, and I will become more convinced that these voices will become effective in the polls.
Professor Skidmore, what do you make of the timing? When they made the announcement now, and what do you think are the concerns that Trump brought to the Republican Party?
Well, I do think that it would be foolish to expect a large number of Trump supporters to abandon him, that is, his hardcore supporters. Those independents who supported him can easily shift their opinion. I think the significance of the Republican movement against him is not that it indicates a large group of Republicans moving away from Donald Trump, but the fact that it does exist and that the military figures are prominent in that movement. Generals and admirals who served under Trump have been critical of what Trump is doing, and even though that may not affect Trump's base, I think it does affect the atmosphere in general. I think that if you look at the states that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, I don't see any of those states that are going to shift in favor of Donald Trump. The three so-called blue wall states that turned out not to be a blue wall at all, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, are wavering and are seeing Joe Biden in the lead now. I think that it's much more likely that some of the states that went for Trump in 2016 will go for Biden than it is the other way around. Of course, if they don't, then Biden wins again. We need to remember that it isn't a popular vote.
To make the edible oil product, because we can't afford the cream.
She won the popular vote in 2016. She lost the electoral college vote, and that could happen again in this election.
Professor Skidmore, how about the middle of the road voters? We know who are crucial to keeping their majority in the election. How do Trump's responses to COVID-19 pandemic and also the nationwide civil unrest so far resonate with the middle of the road voters?
Well, Trump simply says that he handles everything perfectly, and his hardcore supporters may believe him when he says that. But any objective observer will note that, or should note that, the reaction to COVID-19 in the United States has been elusive. So by that standard, Trump's leadership was worse than that of any other world leader. Any other leader in the world has had a better COVID-19 response than Donald Trump. And again, as I indicated early when I first started speaking, all that occurred on Donald Trump's watch. Every one of the 2 million or so coronavirus cases.
Come on, you guys do this every fucking day, don't you?
Are cases that developed when he was president. Every one of the almost 120,000 deaths from coronavirus infection, COVID-19, in the United States have occurred on his watch. So he can say all he wants that he handles things perfectly, he wouldn't do anything differently, and he's the greatest and all that.
What is up with your fucking phone, bro? What is he?
It doesn't hold water. It doesn't bear out. Our mothers always taught us when we were children, don't boast. Nobody likes a braggart. But apparently
drug dealers tell me don't brag what you do.
But I don't see people who are not.
Cut him off.
Professor Skidmore, it seems that we're facing some technical problems with your line, so we'll call you back.
He had to take a shit while he's on his cordless. He got the cheap cordless because he's cheap.
The road voters, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's becoming harder for him now. I have the impression that before COVID-19 pandemic really hit the United States, the topics and the concerns that are most important to American voters, there are several of them, but I think one of them is healthcare, and this pandemic I think made the issue moved along the priority list for American voters. And I think Trump's handling of the whole thing, especially what we heard from the news that a lot of deaths happening in this pandemic are from the Black community and also from the underprivileged community. That's the thing I think is making Trump's bragging less convincing to the middle of the road voters, and people will look more into his healthcare policy from now on.
Professor Fabrizio, who will have more support from the middle of the road voters?
Any fucking drug cartel? What do you do actually?
I'm going to
better
agree
health
with
benefits
the
from
other
them,
two
are you?
panelists. Those middle-of-the-road voters,
You have a bunch of henchmen and drug dealers who
they're
are
not in love with Donald
bad
Trump.
bishop reading.
And if this election is a referendum on Donald Trump, they don't look at him very kindly. And so as a consequence, I think that they would move to Joe Biden. But we have to remember that it's going to come down to turnout in many of these states. And who is most likely to turn out?
What are you talking about?
Will the middle-of-the-road voters turn out because they don't like Donald Trump?
Turn it up.
Or will they turn out because they like Joe Biden? And how will that compare to Trump's hardcore supporters who plan to turn out, who are excited to turn out, who are angry that anybody's attacking Donald Trump, and they want to express their support for Donald Trump? So I think part of what we're going to be dealing with in this election is a focus on getting out those middle-of-the-road voters. And will Joe Biden be able to get them to the polls? And that we'll have to see.
So, Professor Fabrizio, you remind me that a lot of people say they voted for Trump, not Hillary Clinton in 2016, because he was the better of the two evils. Do you think the mentality will happen to Trump or Biden again?
Dutch people talk like that.
Who will be
better
the less evil here
things
this
like
time, in your opinion?
Not much in the way of religion.
I think that's really interesting. In 2016, it was a really strange election because the majority of Americans didn't like either candidate. They just didn't like him. And in the end, people decided they liked Donald Trump less, more than they liked Hillary Clinton, even though they didn't like either of them.
In the
So
US,
Donald Trump was
being
less disliked. This time, the polls indicate that in that same position with people who don't like either candidate, they like Joe Biden more than they like Donald Trump. So we could see, and I think the signs are all pointing to a reverse of what took place in 2016.
It's increasing at a slower rate this week.
Professor Skidmore, how about the young people? We know young people among the millennials and Generation Z, they are considered the ones who will suffer the greatest economic hardship from the COVID-19 pandemic, which will rob them of the career-defining education and employment opportunities, etc. So where will their votes go?
And Generation X.
Well, I think their vote will go primarily to Joe Biden. I think Professor Fabrizio is absolutely correct. There were voters who didn't like, most voters I think didn't like either candidate in 2016.
How did you
but
have
we
static?
can exaggerate or misinterpret that response because
do you live up the street from the radio station near your house?
Donald Trump, as Professor Fabrizio pointed out, it was the workings of the Electoral College and the distribution of the vote that counted rather than the number of the vote. And whether or not that dynamic will be the same in this election is problematic, particularly in as much as there is not the widespread dislike for Joe Biden that there was for Hillary Clinton.
You could say that.
It is true, I think, that young voters do not overwhelmingly find Joe Biden the kind of person they most want in the presidency, but when contrasted with Donald Trump, I think they will very definitely break in favor of Joe Biden.
Quinn, what's your take on this?
I think theoretically, the current situation, especially the George Floyd case and also the riots, and the police right issue, should push more voters to the polling station. But I think, as one of the panelists already said, the result really depends on one very important factor, and that's the turnout. And I remember I think we have to take this issue group by group. Like for young people, it turns out it appears that American elder generations of Americans take voting more seriously than younger generations. They would take time off their work, they go to the polling station, drive, or I mean, if it's close enough, will walk, and they will vote. But for young people, sometimes it's just, I don't know how to talk to my boss about taking time off work. And the polling station is very far from my place. I don't have a car, so probably I won't go. And also the American election system is designed very sophisticated. So sometimes you have the polling, the ticket is very complicated, and you have to really study each candidate to cast your vote. So a lot of these factors will become the things that stop minorities or young people from going to the polling station, and it really depends on who and how many are going to appear.
Professor Fabrizio, will the current crisis increase voter turnout, or will the turnouts be affected by, Liu Kun just mentioned, those obstacles?
You asked the $1 million question, and right now we don't know. And it's really going to come down to the campaigns themselves to get their turnout. They are the ones who are going to have to organize their voters to get out to vote. And it's not just that. The Republican Party is engaged in trying to limit turnout on the other side. It's the word voter suppression is going around. And President Trump, recently made a big deal about mail-in voting. And that is all part of an effort to discourage the other side from voting using systems, using the complicated electoral system that we have to limit the vote on the other side. So that is the factor that's going on
ballots. We don't even
so the
Biden
campaign has a very difficult job. They have to get younger people, they have to get minority groups who traditionally have not gone to the polls in the same numbers as older white voters. They have to get them to the polls. And the question is, are they going to be organized enough to do that? In the meantime, Donald Trump is working like crazy to get his base, his voters excited. And so, as Professor Skidmore said, the President Trump's rally next week in Tulsa is a deliberate attempt to get his base going. And so Biden is going to have to step up his efforts, or they're not going to have the turnout that they need to win this election.
Professor Skidmore, how do you assess the voter turnout this year in November? And about the American minorities, will they vote? Because we know those who was actually modest in previous elections.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely correct that the turnout is going to be the major factor. The turnout of young people, the turnout of the elderly, the turnout of Democrats versus Republicans, Republicans versus Democrats. There are, as Professor Fabrizio pointed out, extreme efforts on the part of the Republican Party to suppress votes that are likely not to go Republican. On the other hand, the COVID-19 situation may work more strongly on the elderly and keep them away from the polls more than it does young people. So everything is up in the air. As we said earlier, things can change dramatically in 5 months. But turnout will be the key. There's no question about it.
As actually we mentioned before, if you want to know whether Trump will win in 2020, some say a good place to start would be to ask why he won in 2016. So, Professor Fabrizio, do you think those conditions that made him win in 2016 remain present in 2020? And will those conditions make Democratic Party to re-examine their priorities and the strategies this time?
It's interesting. You look at conditions, and we're a big country, and as a consequence, there's different conditions in different places. So things that were very important in 2016 might be less important in 2020, whereas there's whole new concerns that have come up that change that. So the economic situation is so much different today than it was 4 years ago. And so President Trump is really struggling to come up with a message that resonates. Before, he had a message that targeted specific parts of the country about manufacturing, about trade with China. Now, it's a whole different kind of thing. His message now is, hey, I can bring the magic back that I had just a year ago. And do people believe him? And in a sense, we're talking too early. This is a conversation we'll know much more about in terms of economic conditions 2 months from now and 3 months from now.
Professor Skidmore, what's your take on this? Do you think Biden actually is doing better now than Hillary Clinton in 2016?
Yes, I do. I think he's a more popular candidate.
How's there a shadow?
And I think people are comfortable with him. He may not be the exciting candidate, but he is the comfortable candidate. And I think that there's been enough excitement. People are probably looking for comfort rather than excitement at this time.
I agree. Agree too. But one thing I want to say is that I agree that economy has been one of the very important things that people consider, when choosing their candidates. And to be honest, if you look at the job performances during the Trump administration, it hasn't been that bad. And economy and also the stock market is certainly the things that Trump has been very proud of, and that's why he tweeted a lot of his tweets about that, about job performances, about the stock market. And I agree with the professor when you said that America is a really big country, so it's different. The conditions might vary from places to places. But I think what delivered Trump's victory in 2016, especially in Midwest America, hasn't really changed that much during the past 4 years. I don't know whether you agree with that or not, but I don't think they have changed much. In 2016, I think lots of people in Midwest America are feeling that they are losing out in this age of globalization, and people are sick of the rhetoric that's coming out of Washington, and people are sick of what's happening in the bureaucracy of the U.S. government. So if 2016 was a referendum on Washington establishment, if 2020 will be a referendum on Trump, 2016 was a referendum on the Washington establishment. That's what I think.
Professor Skidmore, I'll give you a chance to respond.
Well, I think the referendum on the Washington establishment cannot go in, or it's unlikely to go in Trump's favor, because the situation in Washington, to all observers, is chaotic. Internationally, we Americans are no longer considered to be the country to look forward to for leadership. Even domestically, Americans aren't looking to Washington for leadership. Trump himself has abdicated, saying with regard to COVID-19, let the governors do it. That way, if they are successful, he can take credit. If they're not successful, he can cast blame. I don't think this will be a popular approach. People are looking to Washington for leadership, and they say they see chaos. Previously, they didn't like what was going on in Washington in 2016, but it was not the chaotic situation that's going on now. I do think that whether it's a referendum on Washington or a referendum on Trump, in both cases, or in either case, you would find a referendum on a chaotic, leaderless situation.
Professor Fabrizio, since we are rapidly coming toward the end of the program, so let's move on to the next topic. Actually, one possible scenario, let's say Biden wins the election, he has made it clear he's absolutely convinced that military would escort President Trump from the White House if Trump refuses to leave the office. So will Trump refuse to leave the office, and will the military do such a job?
Yeah, think about that as in North America, did you?
Good question. In the end, we don't know. I think there is a suspicion that Trump will refuse to leave the office. In the end, I think he will leave the office. In the end, he's an American. He's trained in America. His whole focus, even when he ignores so much of the Constitution, he knows the rules. And in the end, he will play by them. If it's a bizarre circumstance and there's a complaint about the election results and fraud in the election results, and he decides to ignore that and stay in office, even though the Constitution would not let him, the military definitely would step in and do the job. And I think that's why the action yesterday by General Miley, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was so important. He separated himself from the president, and he reminded the officers, the senior leadership in the military, that they followed the Constitution. So I don't see Trump refusing to leave the White House. I just don't see that. But if it happens, the military will do what it has to do.
Quinn, what's your take?
I agree. I don't even know where this Trump won't leave the White House theory originally come from, because I don't think it's possible for anyone to refuse to leave its office post in America because of rule of law. I don't think that's the case. And
even in China,
I think so. I think the people in the Pentagon are professionals and they know their roles. They will do what they need to do.
Dictators, you don't expect them to leave.
Why Biden make such a remark?
Right? What do you mean not leave?
Well, I agree that that
want our president to leave. It wouldn't be a dictatorship.
He would have to stay in office, and if he did, he would easily be removed. There were similar concerns on the left about Richard Nixon, and he actually left office before the end of his term. So I wouldn't credit it. Where did it come from? Part of it came from Trump himself, who is complaining already about elections being rigged. He even said that the election in 2016 was rigged, that he won. And I think in a sense he was right. It was rigged in favor of him because of the function of the Electoral College.
I don't see the possibility of him refusing to leave the office, but I do see the possibility if he loses, there will be a lot of drama that's coming, out of the White House, and will, from what the personality already displayed to us, I think there will be stories after stories.
Professor Fabrizio, do you have any other opinions on this?
Just a final thought that part of this idea is coming from the Democrats as a way to energize their base, to get out their voters. So, I look at Joe Biden when he started talking about it, and certainly the idea started with President Trump, but Joe Biden has to get his base energized, and this is a great way to do it.
Unfortunately, we ran out of time for today's panel discussion. That's it for this edition of World Today. Thanks to all of our guests for being with us and your insightful opinions. Dr.
I'm looking at it from here.
Professor Emeritus of Political Science, University of Missouri, Kansas City, and Dr. Paul Fabrizio, Professor of Political Science, McMurray University, and Leo Flynn, PRI's former correspondent in Washington, D.C. If you want to hear this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching Grow Today, or you can find us on Easy FM in your app store. I'm Diana. Thank you so much for joining us.
I don't know about a Nancy. I know it's two stories, but you don't know about a Nancy. What the fuck's this a Nancy then? Nancy sounds like a girl. Why you got a girl's name? Nancy. Not Nancy. Nancy.
I am Alka Acharya. I teach at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in India. Today has organized its programs and is stressed on bringing in a lot of views from all over. It is an extremely good platform for information and analysis, and I wish it all success in the future.
You on this station doesn't get acknowledged.
You're listening to The Today Show with in-depth coverage of global events with a different perspective. Expert guests from around the world sharing their views and debating issues closely related to the world today. To hear this episode.
Do I have to press a button and use a mouse to do this?
It keeps you informed and inspired.
So you play over the music, but you turn off the text.
Ever worried that you'll miss out on breaking events? Tune in to Today to get the latest news and analysis on the important stories in China and around the globe.
You're not listening,
Today,
hello.
illuminating the news that matters to you.
Free signal.
You're listening to China Plus Radio, connecting you with China and the world.
Now the news, I'm Wenjie. The largest wholesale market of agricultural products in Beijing has been suspended for disinfection after people working there have tested positive for the novel coronavirus. All personnel who had close contact with the market since May 30th will undergo nucleic acid testing. Authorities say the city now has 98 qualified institutions for the testing, with the daily capacity exceeding 90,000. The Xinfadi market has more than 4,000 tenants. Beijing reported one confirmed COVID-19 case on Thursday and 6 more on Friday. All of the cases are connected to the market or their close contacts. The city will strengthen inspections of food markets. China has launched multiple online activities to celebrate this year's Cultural and Natural Heritage Day, which falls on Saturday. More than 1,600 documentary films and pictures on intangible cultural heritage are being promoted on 8 popular online platforms. Shops on e-commerce platforms have joined a shopping campaign to sell items related to 4,500 different kinds of intangible cultural heritage. India has reported another record daily spike in coronavirus infections as the country passes the grim milestone of 300,000 cases. The health ministry reported more than 11,000 new cases on Saturday and 386 deaths, driving the toll of fatalities up to 8,884. The government imposed a nationwide lockdown in late March. India's caseload jumped by about 100,000 cases in a week, which coincided with the reopening of shopping malls, houses of worship, and restaurants. The head of the World Health Organization has expressed concerns about the coronavirus' disproportionate toll on certain populations. Secretary General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says the WHO was especially concerned about the impact on people who struggle to access health services, often women, children, and adolescents.
The indirect effects of COVID-19 on these groups may be greater than the number of deaths due to the virus itself. Because the pandemic has overwhelmed health systems in many places, women may have a heightened risk of dying from complications of pregnancy and childbirth.
He also said the UN Health Agency had recently investigated the risk of mothers spreading the coronavirus to their newborns and concluded that the benefits of breastfeeding outweigh the risks of transmitting the virus. The French Foreign Ministry has urged the United States to refrain from sanctioning International Criminal Court officials investigating possible war crimes by U.S. forces in Afghanistan. French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian says the U.S. decision represents a challenge to multilateralism and judicial independence. The ICC in March authorized an investigation into possible war crimes in Afghanistan including those that may have been committed by the U.S. military and the Central Intelligence Agency. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has signed into law a sweeping package of police accountability measures that received new backing following protests of George Floyd's killing. The measures were approved earlier this week by the state's legislature. The laws will ban police chokeholds, make it easier to sue people who call police on others without good reason, and set up a special prosecutor's office
How about the
to
cops are
investigate
fucking?
the deaths of
Who
people
cares why they
during
called them?
and following encounters with
Your
police
response
officers.
still should be to kick in the door and start shooting.
Hong Kong Ocean Park has reopened to visitors after more than
okay
4
if they're
months of
criminals,
temporary closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
You almost have to thank the
Visitors are
people
required
swatting
to
for
wear
doing that.
face masks to prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
It's almost epic.
They also have to reserve spots in advance due to a reduced capacity of 9,000. Ocean Park's Executive Director of Operations and Entertainment, Timothy Ng.
We understand that there is a high demand, and as a matter of fact, that we need to comply with the requirements, from the government to enhance the hygiene measures, and also to implement the social distancing management to make sure that the guests and the staff and also the animals, they will be safe when we reopen the park.
The park will only gradually increase capacity in late July. That's the news. I'm Wen Jie.
Would you leave it all behind to set your sights on new horizons?
跟其他不一样的生活的方法，
I can say it, I just wasn't listening well enough.
Could you journey afar to embrace your field of dreams?
江門創業嘅呢3年半嘅時間
I've been in Shanghai for 18 years.
Is it or is it not $83, Dougie? Damn it, this is...
In footprints.
You can pay my stupid fines, I need a license plate that I physically possess.
Where everyday people beat the odds and leave their mark. Footprints.
Oh, well, if I pay it now, it's a drop in the bucket. It's money out of my pocket, but it's not really money to
People
them.
always
They're not
say
looking
the
at it
story
as this
starts
big
when a
profit
person
away
leaves
from us
home.
anymore, are they? They're
This is
broke as
especially
fuck,
true
so
for Han Yang,
pay the fines.
a young
I
man
wanna
who
buy a
left
house
his
later
home
that's
city, Hong
tax
Kong,
default.
after graduating
They go,
from a
oh,
top
you
local
owe,
college, as he didn't
no, I
want a
don't.
free-range life.
The $1,600
He eventually
thing
came to Beijing,
went away,
a city
so
he barely knew, and tried to
Friday
figure out
night.
how and where to build his future.
Check this
To his surprise, he grew enamored with the city and its people, and later found his dream career there.
Is this the dream
And
sequence
Yang's
of
story is
Macau?
not unique among Chinese people fighting for a better life in a big city that's far from home.
Or it's
But his motivation, resilience, and his clear vision for
from
his
rural
future,
areas to city
even after
areas.
going through a long period of uncertainty, makes him stand out from his peers.
Legend of me.
This is Footprints, a new series that follows the footprints
I
of people
know,
who
but
have
it's just
stories
me
to
and
tell
you.
and ideas to share. I'm Carl Benjamin.
Yo-Yo's
In this
adventure
episode, we're bringing you the
at
bittersweet
minus
story
30.
of a
Because
young
what
man
we're doing, or do you want to see what a
finds his
silver
place in
snow
Beijing.
world looks like at minus 30? Oh, no, because it's June right now. It was
It's
snowing
early December.
last month, you
The
crazy
temperature in
king girl.
Beijing
What's
has
wrong
dropped
with
below
you?
zero. We meet Han Yang in Beijing's business district, Chaoyang. At first glance, you might find it difficult to look away from this handsome young man.
What are
He's
the popular
tall,
activities
chic,
in this
and well-dressed.
paradise?
He easily stands out in a crowd. You could also mistake him for an actor, and there's a story on why a bit later.
I don't do this shit with eyebrows on purpose. If I am looking at myself, I'm probably wearing a bandana, so I'm prepared to go
Han Yan
outside.
is an interior designer. His company is in Galbadian East, a cultural and creative industries cluster that's about an hour drive from downtown. Han Yan takes us to a fast food restaurant called Black Pepper. It's about a 2-minute walk away from his company. Many young people working nearby eat there on weekdays. And so is Han Yang. According to the restaurant owner, he's a VIP customer here. He says he loves the milk tea because it's a taste of home. It's a taste of Hong Kong.
4杯4杯奶茶，这个还挺正宗的。但是我喝多几次以后，我发现。
This is quite authentic, but after I drink it for several times, I find it's a little bit different from the milk tea back home. Anyway, it's difficult to make it exactly the same as Hong Kong milk tea, since the local ingredients are different, but it is still very close.
So what is
It's 3 in the afternoon. Han Yan has had his first meal of the day. After a client meeting in Shijingshan district in the west of Beijing, he rushed back to the east side for another meeting. But on his way back, the client sends him a message to put off the meeting to another day. Han Yan is still energetic, even after driving over 100 kilometers around the city. He tells us that adapting to the needs of his clients is an important part of his job.
I'm slow as fuck.
It's common that clients change the meeting time, so I need to change my schedule in accordance with their calendar. It happens quite often.
Han Yan came to Beijing 6 years ago. He now speaks fluent Mandarin and fits in well. When he talks about his job and his life here, he sounds ambitious and hopeful. However, just like many young people who leave home and try to build their life from scratch in a big city, he was once confused about his future. That confusion lasted a while. Back then, this young man probably didn't know that later his life would be changed and shaped by a city that he'd never been to. To know the whole story, we need to go back to the beginning. In fact, we need to go back even a bit further than that. 30 years ago, Han Yan's father came to Shanghai and started his business from scratch. Years later, with hard work and the rapid growth of the economy of the Chinese mainland, Han Yan's father became a CEO of a listed company at the age of 28. Han Yan has always been proud of and motivated by his father's inspirational story. But on the other hand, he also feels the pressure.
I get a tattoo of a cigar, are you a communist?
He became a CEO when he was 28. I'm almost 28, but what do I have? It seems there is a huge gap. Of course, I probably should not make that comparison, but that is pressure for me.
Born in 1992, Han Yan has never stopped thinking about one question. What should I do to build my future? That question bothered him, especially after he graduated from the University of Hong Kong with a bachelor's degree in sociology in 2014. At that time, finance, tourism, trade, professional services, these were all major pillar industries in Hong Kong. But he wasn't interested in any of them.
I'm just speaking English in the United States. A lot of fucking places.
There are few career choices in Hong Kong. There were many jobs demanding expertise in Hong Kong, such as finance, medicine, law, and accounting. However, there were few cultural innovation-related or creative industries.
Han Yan showed a strong interest in the arts and in the structure of spaces from an early age. When he was in primary school, he could assemble a computer by himself. However, he says he didn't find anything that interested him during his traditional elite education in Hong Kong. More importantly, he didn't want to follow an established pattern of life, which is why he decided to leave Hong Kong after he finished his education.
In Hong Kong, there is a clear hierarchy. I have to go to a good college and perform well. Then I become a doctor or a lawyer to make money. Professionals can earn high salaries. Everything is arranged in terms of how you are educated and how you grow. I don't see a lot of possibilities.
Han Yan felt he needed to relax so he could sort his life out and find out what he truly wanted to do for work. At that time, his father was working in Beijing, so he decided to go to the city for a short vacation. Before that, he'd seldom visited the Chinese mainland. He had little idea about what life was like there. He just remembers that in Hong Kong, most of the news about the mainland tended to be pretty negative.
Oh, this crazy, you didn't know all the Chinese, you know, like units of
I knew little about things over here before. Hong Kong media seldom covers local news. They mainly cover international news. Sometimes there are negative stories about tourists from the Chinese mainland. There may be reports on the general economic situation of the Chinese mainland, but there were little on the culture and local places.
You made a sound when you fell there.
But Han Yan was skeptical, and he wanted to explore Beijing to see what life there was really like. And so, with uncertainties both about the Chinese mainland and about his future, Han Yan came to Beijing. To his surprise, the city amazed him in a good way.
觉得好大，就在这地方，大到哇，那个长安街。
The place is huge. I felt everything was so magnificent, especially the first time I walked down the Chang'an Avenue. Hong Kong is small and beautiful, but it is totally different here. Everything is spectacular.
那个长安街那个路都4条5条的，
然后整齐、规整，就是方方正正的。
That was my first impression of Beijing. The city was huge. Then I felt everything was in order. The streets were clean, and the views at night were beautiful.
特别好看，特别美。
What surprised Hanyang next was the mobile payments taking the city by storm, which make life so convenient in the city.
就是你意想不到的，就没有想到点个外卖可以手机解决。
Everything is so convenient. I never expected that you can order takeaway food on your phone. You are access to all different services through apps on your mobile phone. You can pay the bills by phone. I think this is the only place where you can go out without taking cash. This is surprising.
不知道内地原来不用带钱跑出去，很多人都不知道。我说了，什么概念？没有概念，没有概念。
Many people in Hong Kong have never had this experience. 99% of your daily life can be dealt with your mobile phone.
是很夸张的。
Hanyang was overwhelmed by the kindness of the people he met here. He told us that he was once scheduled to fly back to Beijing at night, so he booked a car pickup service at the airport. But his flight was delayed for 4 hours. But to his surprise, the driver was still waiting for him at the airport.
然后没有，因为那时候很晚，因为晚了4个小时嘛，晚点了。
It was very late. It was about 2 a.m. when I got off the plane. The driver said he worried that I couldn't take any taxi at that time, so he kept waiting for me. I was touched.
Did he not cancel? Can you not? I mean, maybe you have a service or something. They got serious rules about
What
that.
Hanyang saw and felt dispelled his doubts and worries about the city. Instead of culture shock, Hanyang soon adapted to life in the city, and he decided to stay and try his luck. Shortly after settling in, one of his friends shared a special job offer with him.
其实我来到这边就认识了很多朋友，因为我性格比较爱交朋友。
I have made a lot of friends since I came here. Some friends think I am good looking, so they asked me if I was interested in acting. Then I was introduced to some directors. They encouraged me to take up this job. As
it happened, becoming a celebrity was one of Hanyang's dreams when he was very young. As a matter of course, he officially broke into the world of entertaining. So far, it seems like Hanyang's story would have a happy ending. He moved to a new city to find work and accidentally gets his dream job.
Accidentally? Whoa.
However, it turned out that survival in the Vanity Fair was not as easy as he thought it would be.
It's just like a lot of these stories, they have like
To be honest, it's a difficult job. Firstly, it's impossible that you will only work for 8 hours a day. Actors have to spend an hour to do the makeup. Actresses may spend an hour and a half. It may take even longer if the makeup process is complicated. Work hours are even longer once shooting starts. It might take 16 or 17 hours or even a whole night. My health condition deteriorated because you eat takeaway food every day.
Hey, listen, your takeaway food.
Other than the grueling work hours, he was also reluctant to deal with the frequent social dinners and parties that many of his peers were keen on.
我以前在演艺圈也不用到演艺圈吧，就圈边，我觉得很燥。
When I was doing the job as an actor, I tended to be impatient. The director decides the way you breathe, where you look, and the movement of your hands and lips. You are completely controlled and can't be yourself.
但还是按导演的来吧，觉得什么都设定好，剧本都设定好，我就。
Being an actor means you have to keep waiting to be selected and arranged. Everything is set, the script is written, and everything is settled. You don't have any right to speak.
It often takes a meandering road for a low-level actor to become a top-level one, and the steps aren't as clear-cut as they might be for other professions. How can I build up my career? Hanyan never stopped thinking about that question during his 3-year stint as an actor. His struggles are not unique for young people working in big cities, who often face both opportunities but also bigger competition.
Since I have already come to the city, I must adapt to it. I won't go back, no matter how hard it is.
And you're gonna end up in this class of people like.
To better adjust to the fast pace of life in the city, Hanyan kept trying new things and learning new skills. He became a registered dietitian. He launched a small photography studio to shoot photos for friends. He joined a gift designing project, and he got into event marketing. He believes that with more skills and more experience, he can increase his value and gain better working opportunities. In Hanyang's eyes, Beijing is a city full of economic opportunities, and as long as you're willing to work hard, you can build a future here. He believes he can somehow find his place in this promising city.
我希望就是我在北京赚到的钱，可能我做一个外卖员。这个是我问过一个外卖员的，他说我。
I see hope in Beijing. I was told by a food courier that he can earn over 10,000 yuan a month, which is higher than the salary of a college graduate. He rents a house at a remote area in Beijing, which costs him about 1,000 yuan. Except for other expenses, he can save the rest of his money.
那我有一天寄回老家，我2年就可以存首期了，因为老家的房可能就50-60万，对吧？就挺大的了，100多平。
In 2 years, he will be able to afford the down payment of a house in his hometown. This is good, as you can have a mentor to your future. At least he can have his own house.
在香港，你地产这么贵，你每天。
But in Hong Kong, housing prices are so high that you don't see any hope. A mortgage down payment can cost you a huge sum of money.
West are trying to live right downtown. They don't want a car.
That's also one of the reasons why big cities remain a top destination for aspiring young people. Bigger competition also means bigger motivation. Hanyan kept looking for something that could offer him steady and clear personal growth, something that he could fight for. And it turns out he found it in an accidental way. At that time, Hanyan's family was designing their house in Beijing. The process wasn't pleasant. The decor was a disaster, and the furnishings were cheap and of poor quality.
You in the ghetto in China, you're gonna have some ghetto furniture, bro. Cheap made in China crap.
I think the designer had bad taste. Once I was having a meal in a fast food restaurant, I found the decoration and furnishings were almost the same as the designing sketch of my house. The furnishing materials were also similar. I was mad.
Drive me crazy.
就是很相近70-80%。
You get housing projects and you go to the community center and the school.
然后后来我就把这些写掉，自己想。
So I'm a designer and started to do it by myself. That's how I started to learn about decoration.
This pushed Hanyang to redesign the house, and this time he decided to do it by himself, even though he'd never studied interior design before. He spent 2 months learning some basic knowledge before he got started, but quickly showed his talents.
但我觉得我上手还挺快的，都有点学过3D。
I think I am a fast learner. I learned all the software in 2 months and became proficient in them. I was able to create a decoration plan by then.
有培训，有去培训，但是我觉得老师，我上了差不多1个月以后。
First, I learned by taking classes. It was a 4-month course. After the first month, I felt the pace was slow, so I started to learn by myself. It took me about 2 months to learn all of it.
然后大概2个月时间就全部学了。
During the whole process, he did almost everything on his own, from designing, budgeting to purchasing, and at the same time, he kept learning more professional knowledge about interior design. This time, he felt a glow of excitement and passion in his life.
好像自己因为喜欢，我就花时间去钻研它。
I think when you love something, you are totally willing to spend time on it. If it is something you don't like, it will be torture. But if you like your job, you can enjoy yourself when you learn new things. For me, I enjoy every day when I do interior designing.
A year later, Hanyan finished the decoration of the house. He felt a sense of achievement and was enchanted by the job of an interior designer. In his opinion, you need to learn and develop new skills to become a good interior designer, which means that there's a clear path to career growth. So he decided to take up the business.
Whole mental, spiritual path on fucking interior design.
I really think it's a lifelong journey to be an interior designer because the materials and the skills of the industry have been changing with innovative designs popping up quickly. You have to keep up.
Hanyan soon got a job offer at the company he now works for. He wants to gain as much experience in interior design as he can, so his career can grow really fast.
I'm excited every day. Daily, I am in a positive frame of mind. I know what I should do, which client I am talking to, and what the client wants. I prepare in advance. After I get the case, I make a design and a budget. I also communicate with my assistant and my team. The process is fun. Work with a team spirit.
You get a team and assistants. Big in this shit already. You got a street team or just
thanks to his hard work and his excellent communication skills, he's now a chief designer at his company. Meeting clients and negotiating design proposals is a major part of his job.
Yeah, but do you have a command table that you bring physically into the fucking house?
Abby Ju is one of Hanyan's clients. They met through an event hosted by a Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce.
I think he has good taste. Plus, when I tell him what I want to be designed, for example, I want a modern style with broad usage of technology, such as sliding and electronic screens, a video conference system, etc., he can quickly catch on. It's very important that he understands what I say.
主要是他懂日文就 OK 了。投影啊，对，然后这边的话，对，然后其实他是一个复合型人才，就是现在的社会，它都不是一个单一的人才了。
I think Hanyan is an interdisciplinary talent. Nowadays, it's not enough to have only one single skill. For example, if you are an accountant, besides your major work, you should also learn knowledge about law. It applies to everyone. You can't rely on a single skill to make a living, especially in a city like Beijing. Hanyan owns different skills, so I think he's a good working partner.
不可能只凭一个技能去生活，他就是这样一个人才。
Hanyan and his team need to offer the best design scheme in accordance with the needs of their clients. He says there's nothing else better than a client that recognizes the quality of his designs.
但整体的感觉就是很有满足感，在那里帮客人，就是帮你的客户来完成一个你的设计的时候，他相信你。
I feel a sense of achievement when a client trusts you and hires you as his or her interior designer. You feel a glow of satisfaction. You take the initiative to decide on colors, materials, budgeting, and designing.
都是花一天在你自己手里。每一天都在一点点进步。
I make progress and I gain experience every day. I'm confident that the future will be better.
未来可期。
Now, Hanyan seldom asks himself where his future lies, because he knows he's doing really well in building up his career.
They can't afford to
plans to launch his own design workshop in Beijing before the age of 32.
They don't have the resources.
Hanyan believes Beijing's dynamic and it is why he found his dream career here. He tells us he plans to stay in the city because for him, the word Beijing symbolizes opportunity and hope for other young people like him.
所以我说，为什么这个城市很包容？无论它的人民。
I think Beijing is an inclusive city. People here are also inclusive. There are many different industries here. The environment has given me opportunities. I see my direction, then I fight for it.
可能也是无限的。那你付出了一种努力， 也会加倍。
You've been listening to Footprints.
Good. If you're just talking about other people's podcasts and that's all you're doing, I might be turning you off. Speaking of what you guys listen to the radio show and on another show but a podcast, but oh, that's too much even for me. I'm nice as fuck. Just disappeared into the background. I'm not red and white, I'm transparent. If I was in a shadow and I wouldn't reflect, you just wouldn't see me. What the fuck is this? What happens if I press this? That stops. Does the other one start? No. Quite stop. Let's see if we can get one of those shoes.
But we're turning to action, and what's the latest on MLB and Players Association negotiations?
Relax. We just heard about all this action.
And coming up in business, reducing stress on moving day during a pandemic. We'll hear how one moving company has adapted to social distancing measures while getting the job done. And what they're seeing.
Don't tell me you gotta move to get the job, to get the money, to get the hold on, slow down.
7:31. It's over traffic and weather together on the ones with Toronto's most frequent traffic reports. Zach Bodenstein. This report brought to you by OntarioCars.ca. Watch out for a full closure of the South 400 this weekend from the 407 to the 401. It's all for construction. And again, it's going to be that way until early Monday morning around 5 o'clock. So if you don't exit earlier, you will be forced off from the South 400 to the exit at the 407. If you get off earlier at Highway 7, many options for you to take to travel southbound beyond that. If you're making your way on the northbound 400, the ramps to and from Finch closed off. If you're on the east 401, that ramp to Wolf Lines shut down, and the east QBW ramp to the Lakeshore Park Lawn closed for active TO. Searching for a newer used vehicle, OntarioCars.ca. One site, thousands of vehicles, trusted dealers, OntarioCars.ca. Find yours. With your Saturday forecast, Denise Andriacci.
11 degrees downtown Toronto, a fresh start to the morning. Partly cloudy conditions across much of the GTA right now. Any cloud cover that's lingering, it's going to push out by this afternoon. But it is going to be a slow seasonal stretch. Very fresh conditions, lots of sunshine. Very.
Is it gonna fucking snow? You're the one that fucking hints at you. Up attention.
So make sure you practice your sun protection. The guaranteed high, 19 degrees.
Bullshit.
6:80 news time, 7:32.
Most regions outside the Toronto and Hamilton and Niagara regions.
Somebody has to make those on a goddamn keyboard.
As the province moved to stage 2 of its reopening plan on Friday, which means restaurant patios, hair salons, and swimming pools are now open in some areas across the province.
And many from the city might be taking a trip to enjoy some of those luxuries that we've been missing during this pandemic. 680 Stuart McGinn joins us live with the latest. Stuart.
Leah, it all depends on how bad you want it, but a weekend road trip east to Kingston or Ottawa could take you to a very different looking part of the province, even much closer. The towns of Guelph and Orangeville.
Are you fucking retarded? This whole province is the same, man. 6 feet of snow, 6 feet of mud.
Has introduced a new measure amidst these concerns.
All patrons going into commercial retail establishments have to wear masks now. It was her fear of us being overrun by people from phase 1 areas.
Brown says with appointments for nail and hair appointments booked up, masks not mandatory at patios, and some stores
what if I keep 6 foot distance? What if you cough and sneeze and your fucking fluids end up on something that I'd buy and
most
take
of Ontario comes as all of us get to enjoy gatherings of up to 10 people and new social circles of up to 10 people where physical distancing doesn't have to be maintained. But Premier Doug Ford says this measure would be impossible to legally enforce.
The social circle police aren't going to be knocking on your door. We trust you're going to be doing the right
right thing and just follow the protocols. Says most people following the protocols is the reason why we're here now. With case numbers seeing a steady drop this week, and half of the province's public health units reporting no new cases yesterday. Reporting live, Stuart McGinn, 680 News. 680 News Time, 7:34. The call for an end to systemic racism in Canada continues this weekend.
Hey, sickle cell test. I can't walk around with my pant legs down. Everybody that knows what this shit is can see me no matter what the fuck I do, because you know what I'm talking about. If they know what sickle cell is, it's products. Oh, this here and this, they know exactly what the fuck I am. What? Yeah, you're being an asshole. All these other motherfuckers don't like me, know what I am.
Their mission is to tell the true story of black slaves that landed on the shores of the Americas 400 years ago. The organization says they are marching to support initiatives that right the wrongs of this dark past. And over in Scarborough at Malvern Town Center,
that's the official number is 1519.
Change is holding a unity march that starts at 12:30.
British guy here, 1508.
Black Lives Matter Toronto are once again not involved with any of the weekend's
never touched foot in this con. Why is it named after his bum?
And with recent deaths of DeAndre Campbell and Regis Korchinski-Paquette, people are asking, should police officers who discharge their weapon and kill someone be obligated to give a statement to SIU investigators? Janelle Nelson of City News is speaking to a former SIU investigator about whether or not they should.
The question is being raised once again as the province's police watchdog revealed yesterday that an officer who pulled the trigger at a Brampton complex back in April, killing a young black man, still has not given an interview or provided his notes to the Special Investigations Unit 2 months after the incident.
I think should come increase the accountability.
The family of DeAndre Campbell, the man killed by Peel police, say the 26-year-old had mental health issues and was the one who called 911 in the first place for help. Now, Peel police add that officers typically do remain on active duty during the SIU investigations, and that's because they have not yet been found guilty of anything. Janelle Massa, City News.
680 News Time, 7:36. Where were you 1 year ago tonight? That will mark 365 days since the Toronto Raptors won their first ever NBA championship. Simon Bennett takes a look back.
Oh yes, it's been 1 year since this.
When bullets fly by, when bullets fly by, what you gonna do when them bullets? You just fucking really lost my interest playing that dumb shit. Oh, but that's the hockey song and the oh shit, look at that, I got intelligent shit. Do I have them on both sides like equally? No, I didn't know it. I got something then, but look at this fucking. This is the Afro. I don't care. Afro Dutch. I didn't finish it. All that. I don't care what you find. I tried. Did you met the dude? He got a shaved head yet? You fucking might want to know him long enough for that to go in. Like, no, you don't even know because this don't look like this when it's this short. No. There's trickery. There is some serious deceit. What just happened? What if I press it and let go? Can I get my music back? There's some serious deceit in the world of Dutch here. It ain't out the Dutch, but I didn't even zoom in and see if there's fucking kinks in that shit. Yeah, trim it off, shave it fine. Where? I ruined shavers. Okay, let's see if we can make this work.
Handle my business, the fuck with me is a guaranteed death wish. I was taught to handle my business, the fuck with me is a guaranteed death wish. I was taught to handle my business, the fuck with me is a guaranteed death wish. I was taught to handle my business, the fuck with me is a guaranteed death wish. If there's warriors in the building, better show them respect. Fuck a tough got tough talking on the internet. Fuck that, you wanna talk to this. You ain't gonna miss no snitch. If the paperwork ain't proof enough, I know it is. You know what it is. Hit the 1323 shit. On your shit talk, got you sinking in the sand quick. Ready to mouth to get your punched up. Better hope we don't find where you hide. Cause we the type to kick the door in, invite ourselves inside. Difference between me and you is that I'm a gangster that raps and you just gangster rapping, dog. Don't let surprise when it happens. My homies know for begging victims when we get to clapping. Yeah, gang like me, but I said it was see the real dogs. You just rap over the bars.
Into houses you don't live in.
My business to fuck with me is a guarantee death wish. I was taught to handle my business to fuck with me is a guarantee death wish. I was taught to handle my business to fuck with me is a guarantee death wish. I was taught to handle my business to fuck with me is a guarantee death wish. Yeah. I think you're thinking I'm one of those guys that let shit slide. Nah, dog, when I walk up or drop by, I'm all about a homicide. My finger itches just to pull the trigger. Your finger itches just to pull the finger. I'm a hustler every day up on my grind. You must be out your mind, talking like you hold the tech knife to take lives. Yeah, you live in the fantasy, knowing in reality. Maybe you just don't know who you're fucking with. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is the Kid. Call me Billy, one shot with the shotty at your ribs. From this range, only take one shot to kill. Yeah, I promise blood to spill. Hit the curb quick. While you holding the gun with shaky hands, acting all nervous. Could it be that inside just a little bit?
I have a Chinese rap CD. I'm not even joking. I just have a CD player. Well, I have the music on hard drive. That computer fucked itself up yesterday.
Handle my business to fuck with me is a guarantee death wish. I was taught to handle my business to fuck with me is a guarantee.
I have no idea what they're saying or what the titles of the tracks are. I'm not put this on shuffle. No. How odd is that? CD player bullshit, yeah, but there's 150 fucking tracks in this one. How did it do that?
I'm drunk, so drunk. You can tell cause I'm
DEA, DJ. Put them right after each other. Don't fuck around.
I'm drunk, so drunk. You can tell cause I'm drunk. Come on, chill with me in the top 10. Sipping with the G's. Well, north side is a down down the CTL West. When we ride, looking in the DL. Time in the skills, sticks, keep a peace out. The trigger squeeze, these dwells, release shells, and they shell. Over on the sand like a seashell. And lips beat well, hope you like your meat well. Need help to buckle, make you buckle like a seatbelt. Keep my metal high, so you pop into the heat well. Crack, rock, hustle, crack, locks, so the keys melt. Living with convenience, brothers on the street now. Seasons and X, we take for the shit that we sell. I read my by any means on the DL. Never see test shit, never hear emails. I need weeds, no breeze, so I dream well. She helps stimulate the stress from the streets. I'm high, so high.
This is the Bubba Death and the Pink and I don't write a bit. I don't remember. And that was all it was. Pink Island and Bubba Death. Bubba Death went to a Pink Island? What? You're lying. He must be way too high. That's why we don't fuck with that wacky bad.
So high, so high. I'm drunk.
I need something with a sickle that won't make me look communist. What's on your flag? Crescent moon, 5-point star, oh there. And a cross. Really? Yes. Fucking whatever this was.
I didn't mean to interrupt the party, but this truck can't get out. Plus I think this bitch wanna fuck me. First I'ma knock him out, then I'ma knock one out. Yeah, after that I'm out, laying check on a rampage. I'm gone now, won't be back for days. Living out today, and now my head hurt. Pop a couple perks, try to sleep it off. Usually don't work. Shadow people stalking me. What could they want? What does it mean? I might be tripping, but then again you might get shacked up while you listen. Y'all should listen. Yeah, pay attention. Real talk. I'm high, so high. You can tell when I'm gonna shine guys. I'm drunk, so drunk. You can tell cause I don't give a fuck. I'm high, so high. You can tell when my bloodshot dies. I'm drunk, so drunk. You can tell cause I don't give a fuck. I'm high, so high, so high. Now it's your motherfucking party when I walk in the door, man. Popping bottles full of liquor all over your house, man. Let me tell you something quick. If you don't know by now that I'm a motherfucking wild boy, drunk and loud. I get caught by the house and that's so sound. So tell your baby daddy chill before we get knocked out. I'm doing rails and drinking liquor.
For a ride on Highway 410, motherfucker, toll free. What?
I'll be going for days, banging bitches at the bar in the bathroom stall. I'm doing rips off of bitches that I hear last call. So I'ma hit the vendor up and head straight to the party. Came drunk and I'm blacking out till the world starts spinning around and around.
How did they do that? I gotta say this up. You know, you people think I can't party or something. No, I just don't do shit. What's going on with me is not from fucking self-abuse or drug abuse or any of that. You think I'm not taking care of myself? I'm barely able to. I'm not fucking criticizing. Oh, you should do this and that. Yeah, fuck it. To what end is my response to that? You're a fucking alien. Yeah, like that alien trying to look like an alien. I'm not an alien, I swear. Let's see your ears.
Yeah, I drink.
I have no ears.
When I'm wide awake, I might lose it all. That's the risk I take. Yeah, I drink.
Look, I'm supposed to hop off a pirate ship with a fucking sword. Give me your.
Yeah, I drink. When I'm wide awake, I might lose it all. That's the risk I take. Yeah, I drink. When I'm wide awake, turn up the beat. I refuse to be.
All that shit like this, because in the beginning, like, it's not criminal to advertise to somebody to know how to sell the drugs, double up on it.
Black mask, get a 4-door G-Ride.
These junky baseball players selling basic juice, and you call me a faker and a player. I think you need to get the fuck out of here. Let's clear the air, fill it with some weed smoke. Well, we are not squeeze the tickets on the state public figure telling us what to do. I'm just going hard till I'm in that body bag. I'm not here to warn you to get off the fucking party.
Yeah, my pants sag as soon as they got back. We move on them as soon as they come in range. All grown ups to blame cops and robbers. Real cops, real guns, and real robbers.
Cowboys and Indians. This is the skin on the nigga. Fuck where you been? I've been in the gym. This is the skill play. In my mind, I don't think you understand. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. I just. Niggas said we use the word blood till you shit.
Yeah, I live from the gutter. I did grind for my bread and butter. I'd rather die than let my family suffer. Fucking undercover, eternal summer. Like the God of thunder. From the sits to the keys, you ain't done what I done. You ain't seen what I seen. I came in the streets when I'm serving these fiends. Yeah, the gun soda. You don't really want to see the bell smoking. Yeah, I dream. Well, I'm wide awake. I might lose it all. That's the risk I take. Yeah, I dream. Well, I'm wide awake. Turn up the beat. I refuse to fade. Yeah, I dream. Well, I'm wide awake. I might lose it all. That's the risk I take. Yeah, I dream. Well, I'm wide awake. Turn up the beat. I refuse to fade. Yeah, I dream.
To the box, bring it back to the basics. Keeping the whole hood on lock with the street combination. Bringing it back to the days when Papa Jake made a statement. In the hood, ain't nothing changed. Struggle daily for the pain. I was raised the place of the product you age. Just I came up, 8-ball of strap bag and a danger. Hustle talking to strangers alike with angels. Myself get to change, just a little with things. I just push my limit, I hate you, but love my haters. Foes on the street trying to fade us, but never could phase. A nigga fucked in the head, so they label me strange. Cause we're touching human nature, this nation's fucked up. Still lurking the lanes, been like that since I was young. And my girl together we won, she taught me how to use my tongue. Felt that cushion, I'm high, so my pain is numb. You can find me lost in the mist and I'm rolling up. West End, listen, my veins flow right through my bloodstream. All day, gotta survive from all the gotta feed. All night, creep through the hood, meets in the alley. Focus my race in the story, but the voice street. Came up on the outside, money over everything. The show me the easy pain. Things again colder, but the soldier marching in the lane. West End went to pay, that's Rose Grace. Mama told me stay in school, you gotta make your daily bread. Instead of nigga cutting class investigations manifest. But mama, I was only 17, posted with the bag. Daddy wasn't there to guide me, streets made me a man. Pray for the Lord to save him, God embracing the hate. Made it to the elevation, stay elevated. Mind focus, heavyweight, but quick, but started facing. Nigga, the foes devastated like a brain dead patient.
Or if your employer threatens to fire you because you're too sick to work, call me at 416-661-47. Don't worry about our legal fees because there are none. At my law firm, we only get paid when you get paid.
You mean to say there's 187 gang members?
There are no bad questions. 416-661-4878 or on your cell phone at pound LTD.
Even if you love renovating, sometimes it helps to hire a professional, just like I did for this radio ad. Fede, could you read the next bit?
Certainly.
Until July 1st at Rona and Lowe's, it's the Installation Services Blitz. Get 10% back on a Rona or Lowe's gift card for any air conditioning, roofing, or kitchen installation project. Plus, our certified installers are duly trained to apply strict health and safety measures.
Wow. Thank you. That was amazing.
Anytime. Conditions apply. Details online.
This is 680 News. It's 7:49. The world continues to fight the novel coronavirus as the global case count grows to 7.5 million. Melissa Duggan from City News has the latest from Brazil.
Numbers continue to climb in Latin America, with Brazil at the
Brazil,
epicenter with more
add
than
Peru, we'll call it
800,000 known cases and deaths topping
South Korea,
40,000,
so we can spell it
marking the
right.
grim
Bricks with a
milestone.
K.
Mock graves were dug in Rio's Copacabana beach this week, protesting the Brazilian government's handling of the pandemic. For City News, I'm Melissa Duggan.
At least one U.S. governor says the COVID-19 pandemic is taking a toll on mental health and physical health.
Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves says there is fear, there is pain, and there is anxiety in this country.
Trying to make an excuse to get slaves
Is
back.
reporting calls to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline from Mississippi have increased 20% since the start of the pandemic. Officials say mental health challenges can arise when there are changes in eating or sleeping patterns, losing a job, and anxiety about health or the health of loved ones. They say the problems can be intensified by increased alcohol or drug use, which is common during this type of national disaster. I'm Jackie Quinn.
And it's time for Food Bites. Here's Rose Reisman.
What's the rule about keeping water bottles in your car for several hours during hot weather?
Well, some plastic researchers recommend against drinking water from plastic bottles left in the heat. The taste also changes with heat. BPA-free bottles are now being replaced with BPS that is similar to BPA but still changes the molecules. Yet, the International Bottled Water Association says the bottles are regulated and safe in hot conditions, and the BPA doesn't violate the FDA standards. Common sense says don't leave the bottles in hot temperatures as a regular occurrence for an extended period. Rather, use glass or stainless steel water containers. With Food Bites, I'm Rose Reisman.
680 News Time, 7:51. It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Checking your drive.
Let them sit in the sun. They're sitting in the fridge.
Oh, yes, I am. This report brought to you by your local Ontario Subaru dealers. And, of course, the big story, the South 400 closure. It's shut down for a portion from the 407 down to the 401. There's road work here until Monday morning. So if you don't exit earlier, southbound 400 commuters are going to have to be forced off at the 407. If you get off at Highway 7, so many options for you.
This is Toronto.
You can just head east or west and then make your way south on a bunch of different routes. We have Highway 27, Islington, Keele, Jane, or Weston. Take your pick. They're all moving well right now. Northbound 400 ramps to and from Finch. Those are closed. So is the West 407
what he just said is a
Toronto
Torontoism. You're going to have to be forced
from the
up.
East 401 to Guelph line. Ontario Subaru dealers are finding all new ways for you to safely shop for a Subaru. Call or connect online. Your local dealer is here to help you every step of the way. Let's get a look at the extended forecast now and see how this weekend's shaping up with Denise Andriachi.
Well, a great weekend. Lots of sunshine, a bit of cooler conditions this morning and tomorrow morning expected. Anyone heading out for an early tea time, walk with the dog, you may need a light sweater. But, you know, the afternoons over the next few days, sunny and very comfortable, just a hint below seasonal. But below seasonal isn't terrible when you're in June. We've got a guaranteed high today of 19 degrees. Temperatures expected to be near there for Sunday.
60
and Monday a little warmer near 21 by Tuesday.
Really?
Wednesday,
No wonder you saw
some warmer air. And by Father's Day, we're back into sort of that hot and sticky weather that we're known for here in Southern Ontario. Your guaranteed high today, 19.
This extended forecast is brought to you by Scotia iTrade. Direct invest with Scotia iTrade. Get started in 3 easy steps and begin your investing journey from home today. Learn more at scotiaitrade.com.
Stage 2 now underway, and it's the first weekend since the Ford government implemented the next phase of its reopening plan. But if you're looking to get a haircut or a pint on a patio, you've got to go outside the GTA. Our Stuart McGinn is speaking with the mayor of one town that's closer than you think. A couple of demonstrations
damn clear and white
across the city today as protesters continue to try to put a stop to systemic racism. Our Joey Keane will have the details on that.
Because I'm here to fucking kill you, so I have no soul.
1 year ago today, that's when the Raptors clinched their first ever NBA title. Those stories and more coming up at 8 o'clock.
Look in your bathroom mirror and ask yourself, do I like what I see?
I'm not sorry, I think you
dated tiles.
Oh.
That shower? Really? And what's with that vanity? Shouldn't the room you make yourself beautiful in be beautiful? AGM can turn your bathroom into a beautiful space for just $2.90 a month. For a free video consultation, visit AGM.
Mother Nature's a racist bitch.
And looking forward to when life resumes.
Listen 3, 4, 5 times a day. This is 680 News.
Well, some major construction is closing a popular route that's going to affect your drive this weekend, especially if you're headed out of town. 680 Zach Bogustine explains.
With Ontario starting to open up, a portion of a major highway is shutting down. Well, it sucks. Yeah, obviously the timing isn't the best with the cottage country surge expected this weekend. Construction is closing the southbound 400 from the 407 to the 401. And it'll be off limits until the early morning commute on Monday. It's the main route back from the north, so if you're headed south on the 400 this weekend, you'll be forced to exit at the 407 unless you get off a little bit earlier.
First published 1945.
If you do that, from there you have many options to head south from Highway 27, Jane, Weston, Islington, or Keele. And if you want to head east, you can take the South 404 DVP right down to the downtown core. We'll have live updates on the volume in the area every 10 minutes in our traffic reports. I'm Zach Bogustine, and we'll also have cottage country traffic coming up at 8:09 this morning. We will guide your drive throughout this afternoon. Business is next.
Hi. I'm Laura Pedoni,
business report's going to suck unless he tells me Bob Clark and his real estate company, but he only paid for
we
one
know
report.
It's not business as usual. In these unprecedented times, we are here for you. Should you need an office away from home or just a comfortable night's sleep, we are taking additional measures to ensure your health and safety. By doing so, we will do our best to make Monte Carlo Inns your home away from home. Visit MonteCarloInns.com for more information.
H. Williams Pawnbrokers' iconic red sign is a Toronto landmark on Church Street, but it's their outstanding 70-year history that makes them a true landmark.
I don't know how much of that shit are pawnbrokers, they take it.
People get over tough times. Visit them. They're not like your bank. They're a licensed pawnbroker.
Loans are guaranteed for 1 year with no monthly payments, no appointment needed.
Bring your valuables and a mask into their sanitized store and walk out with cash. H. Williams Pawnbrokers. Look for the big red pawnbroker sign, 145 Church Street, north of Queen.
We still have to see your face, stupid.
7:56 now the business report. I'm like Apple. Moving day can be as
why are you wearing so many watches? Get out of here.
Pandemic shutdown. But the move must go on. And moving company, 2 men and a truck.
I bet it was $2.95 or $7.95
to make it as stress-free as possible for employees and customers. Company president and CEO John Pretty.
First and foremost, you want to make sure your customers are safe.
Listen, use at $1.95. It was probably was $2.95.
They have masks and rubber gloves and hand sanitizers.
So now, what used to look like a rape kit is just being a good citizen. Why you got a bag with all this? What's with the garbage bags? See what I'm saying? It's creepy shit. Last year is now just being prepared this year.
Make sure that the job site was secure.
And then the use of new technologies to map out what's required for the move.
We have a software program that we use called Gruvio. It allows us to do a virtual tour of the customer's home.
What?
So we can do that pretty well with any smartphone.
You notice I'm jumping on all these things to check about shit. A year from now, if they're still using it, I might look into it. They won't be.
So we can do a complete
inventory
and give them an accurate estimate.
Pretty says
iHeartRadio app. This is an iHeartRadio station. Listen on the Radio Canada Player app.
We're getting thousands of requests for.
None of them say any of that shit anymore. Go try to download the app, but they don't exist anymore.
Now, for example,
you're all back to offering their own app again.
The treadmill from the garage to the basement, those kind of things.
And with real estate sales set to speed up again, there may be some different destinations for those looking to make a move.
I think there are going to be a lot
Make
of
a move,
people
make a move,
making
every pass, make a
lifestyle changes.
move.
You know, there's going to be a migration, out of maybe the downtown core to the suburbs. Maybe there's going to be a migration from the major metropolitan markets to the more rural or seasonal market.
That's John Pretty, president and CEO of Two Men and a Truck. At the Business Center, I'm Mike Apple. Every Toyota.
But how come you're always one guy?
Safe. And every Toyota is sold in a way that keeps you and our staff safe. Our showrooms and service departments are open.
The good thing is, 4 guys in a truck. I never hear a truck. I never hear a second guy. Ever. That's the same guy. It's not like I'm guy A on this commercial. I'm guy B doing this ad or interview. It's the same fucking guy. No truck. There's not even beep, but there's nothing. There's no truck. There's one guy. I'm one guy with no truck too, eh?
Home appliances more than ever. That's why, just like you,
Oh, that's all the intelligence.
is soldiering on. They've adjusted their services, so all their expertise and products are still available online, by email, or by phone. Right now, you need your appliances
This is
to
like
be
the most
dependable,
unique
and the
mirror
professionals
I've ever
supplying them
fucking
even more so. That's why Appliance Canada is doing what they can to keep home feeling like home. With free delivery in the GTA, get
You
started
switch
at
from news to news so you can go to cleaner
Appliance
houses where no one's ever lived, right?
Now, 680 News regional weather conditions for capitaldirect.ca.
don't do
Have
like
you
we
heard
do.
about direct lending? It's more flexible than bank lending without the bank. Go direct. Call Capital Direct today at 1-800.
I do. Hey, you got 20 bucks
what's
for me?
available for you.
In Cambridge this hour, a clear sky, 9 degrees. Markham, partly cloudy and 10. And right now in downtown Toronto, it is partly cloudy and 11 degrees. This is CFTR 680 News at 8 o'clock.
On for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is
14 hours. Okay.
Toronto.
Good morning. It is Saturday, June 13th. I'm Leah Johansson.
Yes,
And I'm Asher
but
Roth. Here's what's making news right now.
Thank you. Yeah, it took me that long to get spot to
Sit on
complete.
a restaurant
I'm
patio
pretty
this
sure it's
weekend,
10.
but some regions outside the GTA are worried about Stage 1 visitors in Stage 2 territory.
Two organizations holding peaceful demonstrations today. Remember the 400 is marching from Christie Pitts to Queen's Park, and the Unity March is happening at Melbourne Town Center in Scarborough.
1 year ago tonight,
There's 6 different fucking clocks. No, these websites pop their own clocks up.
Raptors championship win.
It's a fresh field
It's
this weekend
1900
with
hours. Where
slightly
the fuck is
below
it
normal
like that?
temperatures, but Mother Nature will once again be turning up the heat next week. The NHL has reportedly
that means
settled
it's
on
8
1 and
That's
2
local
hub
time.
cities and
Their
it's moving
local
day
time.
at the Charles Schwab Challenge. Sports at 15.
I don't know if it's telling me
And
off of
business,
UTC or
Canadian
not,
companies
because
are
my
beefing up
clock
their
is
data security while working remotely during the coronavirus pandemic.
Australia's 12.
We'll hear from an expert on the consequences they face if they don't.
14, depending on the time.
680 News Time, 8:01.
Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. With a look at your drive, here's Zach Bodenstein.
And this report brought to you by Aero Furniture. Well, on that drive right now, Leah, we are looking at a closure of the southbound 400. It's shut down from the 407 to the
Somebody gets
401.
shot, right,
And
right?
that's the case until Monday morning.
they
So
caught
if you
a
want to get
case?
around this, just exit at Highway 7 from the South 400. From there, so many options to travel south to your destination. If Jane, Weston, Highway 27, Islington, Keele, so many more in that stretch. So again, lots of options for you. If you're headed northbound on the 400, your only complaint is a little bit of road work. It's affecting the ramps to and from Finch, but everything looks good up and beyond. Cottage Country traffic coming up in about 7 minutes with Barb Andrews. Right now on the
You get
eastbound
big and fat
401 ramp
miles,
to
where they coming
Wolf
from?
Line, that's
Don't
shut
blend
down,
into
and
this shit.
construction's closing the East QBW ramp
Yeah,
to
you
the
tell people
Lakeshore
you figured out how to
at
do it the
Park
past.
Line.
They
That's all for some active TO road work. Don't miss Aero Furniture's stimulus
Bedbugs are
surplus
spread
sales.
by
Save the
airplanes
taxes
and
or save up
hotels.
to 50% off, or don't pay
Like
for
it.
18 months.
All those
Conditions
people
apply.
report
Visit
for
aerofurniture.com. With your forecast for today, here's Denise Andriaggi.
Well, it's a little fresh this morning, but very comfortable conditions this afternoon. High UV index, don't be fooled by the cooler weather. You still need your sun protection if you're heading out today. The kids definitely had sunglasses, sunscreen, and really the whole weekend.
Apparently I was
the
right,
next
because I
couple
didn't
of
get
days, 5 to 7 days, lots of sunshine in the forecast, and slowly we'll start to climb in temperatures. But in the meantime, it's only 10 degrees right now at Pearson 11 downtown. Your guaranteed high 19.
680 News Time, 8:03.
Expect some routes of the city to be a bit busy today. It's the start of the first weekend since the province introduced stage 2 of the COVID-19 reopening plan for the province. And that means you can finally grab a meal on a patio, get a buzz cut, or even take your child to a splash pad just as long as you're outside the GTA, Hamilton, or Niagara region.
And that is why many are expected to flock to those communities that have been given the green light, like Cambridge, Ottawa, even Orangeville. 680 Stuart McGinn joins us live with the details. Stuart.
Asher, those are the areas where so-called Stage 2 and Stage 1 territories clash, and some are worried it's just a quick drive over for those in the GTA that are being held back in the province's reopening. Sandy Brown is the mayor of Orangeville, and he says he isn't concerned about anyone coming to town to go to a nail salon or for a hair appointment.
Hesitation, income, communities. We gotta get the poor people and the rich people in one building. Why?
Despite his views, the public health unit for his region has made masks mandatory in all commercial settings. But Brown says it's important to remember masks aren't mandatory on patios, and people aren't going to come to town to shop in stores that are already open.
Oh, you're smoking and drinking and eating in a fucking place. Hey, how are you going to wear a mask? Hey, I'm here to eat. Put your mask on. How do I do that? How do I tell you all you can take your mask off? It's not mandatory anywhere, but it's not mandatory. It's no more mandatory.
If you look over the last 2 weeks, it's been a steady downward trend with yesterday's 182
Shut up, there's
new
places
cases,
they're
the
not
lowest
counting
daily
or
total since the end of March. Reporting live, Stuart McGinn, 680 News.
And while those stage 2 reopenings don't apply to the GTA, the increase in social gatherings from 5 to 10 is province-wide.
Is stage 2 like line 2?
Residents to follow the rules. Councillor Pat Fortini says that 127 charges have been laid over the past week, the most since the state of emergency was declared mid-March.
In the past week, we had
the last 6 months have been great for soundbite.
for less social distancing, which went up from last week at 179. There was 92 charges laid in 24 house parties. One house party disrespected bylaw, which resulted to 19 people being charged.
He says other rule breakers include 16 charges for large parking lot gatherings. A hair salon also went too early, and people were charged to.
Are you not standing next to your car? Like, what are you? Like, what is it? Are you these assholes like to lean in the car and hang out on the
Demonstrators will once again take to the streets of Toronto today, calling for an end to systemic racism. 680 Stuart McGinn has more.
You broke it. Yeah, I broke it.
Expect to hear crowds chanting this later today. Set for 1 o'clock at Christie Pitts, the Toronto chapter of Remember the 400 is holding a march to Queen's Park. The organization gets its name from the 400 years that have passed.
Hold on. It's only 1620. The Dutch started trading before then. Don't tell me this is oh, it's stopped. Okay, right. It stopped. When did it stop? When you go to North Sudan and buy a South Sudanese slave to pay, when did it stop? If there's women being trafficked from the lake traders' house, it stopped. There's foreign ships docked down here now. How does it stop?
With any of the weekend's protests. I'm Joey Keeney.
And stateside police in Seattle are now barred by federal court from using tear gas against protesters, except in extreme circumstances.
A federal judge here in Seattle ordering that police can no longer use tear gas except when absolutely necessary because lives are in danger. And even then, it has to come with the approval of the chief of police.
Did you at that point not just call in the real army to not fuck things up as bad as you guys do?
Around the building.
Oh, we're sorry we caused hundreds of civilians, but there was a guy with a gun.
680 News Time, 8:07. Local sports fans will be reminiscing today, marking 1 year since We the North became We the Champs. 680 Simon Bennett is taking a trip down memory lane.
Hard to believe it's been a whole run of the calendar since this.
The British got here 1508, only 15 people survived, but it's 1519. Okay, so for 10 years there to get there's enough people here to have half a chance of having a fucking garden with anything grow before they would even dare bring fucking anything up.
Where were you that night? This the sound of the Sportsnet newsroom.
Anything that could help them make money out of the ground.
Still has this recording of himself watching with friends and family. Here's the thing, too. The Raptors were second in the East when COVID-19 interrupted play. They still have a good chance of repeating when the season finally resumes. I'm Simon Bennett.
And to mark the occasion, the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum honoring the man that guided the Raptors to that title run in his very first year as an NBA head coach. 680's Phil Martino reports.
Nick Nurse made his way into our hearts when he led the Toronto Raptors to their first NBA championship.
You talk about bobbleheads.
Make his way into your living room.
I don't give a fuck about this guy.
Co-founder of the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum, says they've unveiled 4 limited edition bobbleheads featuring the Toronto Raptors head coach. One has a celebrating Nurse waving a Canadian flag while holding a microphone in his other hand.
We put a lot of work into him to make sure they, look like Nick and celebrated some of those.
Hey, driver's license. Holy shit.
Each bobblehead in the series is individually numbered. Only 2019.
I got a special trillion you don't have. See it, now you don't. See it.
The bobbleheads sell for $30 US each or 4 for $100. I'm Phil Martino.
680 News Time, 8:09. After sweltering heat and humidity over the past week, the weekend is off to a cooler than normal start with a guaranteed high of 19 degrees. The 680's Irene Perklet tells us these unseasonably cool temperatures shouldn't last too long.
You might need a sweater if you're heading outside today. It's a bit of a cool one.
Well, seasonal high for this time of year should be around 40 degrees
certainly
below that shit, because there's this trillion man. This one's not the government trillion. Don't give me that shit. That's something. There's a different one here, too.
That's Environment Canada meteorologist Gerald Chang. He says the cool down will be brief with a warm-up next week with the humidity once again making it feel like the 30s. I'm Irene Perklet.
No, I'm a community member, especially on the government paperwork, the Ministry of community, and a bunch of other bullshit.
Country traffic on the night. Here's Barb Andrews. And
this
report is brought to you by MuskokaCottages.com. For the most part of the next drive to the
You're leaning against payphones, right? You're the guy that stands on the payphone for 4 hours for no fucking reason,
from Fitch are closed for construction.
The reason they put time into these fucking things.
Through King towards the 400 extension Highway 11 split. Looking at the 401 eastbound, also lightly traveled. We do have construction between the 418 and Holt Road. 2 left lanes are blocked. And southbound 418 at Taunton, we do have construction in the right lane. With Cottage Country traffic on the 9s, I'm Barb Andrews.
Weather forecast you can bank on, because if we're off by more than 3 degrees,
you could win our growing cash jackpot. The 680 News Weather Guarantee. Enter online at 680news.com.
Now the 680 News gas price update. Empro says the price of gas dropped 3 cents at midnight to 97.9 cents a liter at most GTA stations.
98.
Still ahead, traffic and weather together next.
Muskoka realtor Bob Clark has a stunning portfolio.
It's an average, but it always ends on 0.9. It's an average, it always ends on 0.9. This place is charging something 0.5. Oh yeah, they flipped it up. Oh, not 0.4, 0.5. That was a few days ago. It was 88. Just encourage you to buy an even number. 2, 4, 6, or 8 liters. $4 a gas. I want a coin-operated gas pump. Guys, I got 3 tunings. That fills up a motorcycle.
Don't say no names. I hear you whispering names. Just listen what's next. To give an information to change. You didn't snitch off that ain't what your signature stage takes to play. But kids are KJ when he's get straight. This same shit spray war with your kids play. Cali Hollow 4 fists to your rib cage. Give his baby mama 4 dicks in a chit stain. Filthy, we flip case. Slanging shit my quick bang. Chicks bang. Chillin' go we in it for the quick bang. Chillin' with the bitches. Said he's slickin' could we pimp made. Whips with the 6 switch blade. 20-inch range. Well, I'm wide awake. might lose it all, that's the risk I take. Yeah, I dream while I'm wide awake. Turn up the beat, I refuse to fake. Yeah, I dream while I'm wide awake. I might lose it all, that's the risk I take. Yeah, I dream while I'm wide awake. Turn up the beat, I
want Trillium rims on this police car. Those are 6-bolt, 5-spoke, aren't they? Because you guys are assholes, aren't you? I got the pictures here, I know I do. No, I don't, because I fucking, where's the other phone? I don't know. Where did I put it? I always put it right here.
Yeah.
One sad beep. If you had beeped an hour earlier, you could have beeped 2, 3, 4 times out of found you. Is it 14 seconds? It's 12:13. This is 12:13 and 14.
Yeah, bitch. Going up in the wait a second, something else down here. Raise the you're reaching exactly at the right time. You say, fuck you. Yeah, he bound to make the majors, he don't even like sports. He push free base by the ball all day long. He said fuck school, instead of going to class, he looked to cook the way back, pump backs to the money stack. No such thing as a dealer with villains. All I know was cold-hearted, bloodthirsty villain. Shit, I watch himself when I've been pregnant women and children. I ain't trying to solve the problem, I'm a part of it. Finna fuck the world, coke drink got my throat numb. Liquor got me bleeding, dropping my gun. Got a question for the Lord, why someone always end up dead when we having fun? Throw a rose on the casket, time to move on. This is where I'm from, a place of no return. A dead end block where the cracks serve. Yeah, it's cool signs to the real birds. I know that's coming, I'm just waiting to turn. Yeah, I'm drunk, sipping any yo, bro. Count pennies, I ball hard. Yeah, I'm shot with the crack, bro. Turn your baby mama's crib to a crack spot. From a block away, get a chopper spray. But I watch what you say, cause you can end up with some cells in your back like, have a nice day. I know this ain't no way to live where I'm from. It's the only way that is. Yeah, fucking it's the only way that is. All these other motherfuckers stop this shit. Acting like they move this shit, making money and never saw the rock in your life. True hustlers, more stand up. Ride or die shit. I know this ain't no way to live where I'm from. It's the only way there is. I know this ain't no way to live where I'm from. It's the only way there is.
First up, like 51 weeks of the year, makes no noise.
Shot fight, I ain't taking a loss. My door squeeze, that's some hot iron straight in the score. They could try to hot white, but you face you go on. That your mama starts crying, cause you fade me to all. Your body drop, bitch, outline, break the chalk. The shotty pop with your outline, face to the wall. We can brawl, a pop, holler, raging the war. The straight swords, it's just pop bottles, breaking the jaws. You ladies know we make it top dollar, breaking the law. Just crack slinging, see the block models, breaking them more. I can follow rock, swallow, boom, taking the charge. But if I see them cops follow, we'll be shaking them more. The kid is living in chaos, the chambers before we beat the anomalous. We dangerous, doors walk, let it bang. We walk in our cages, slang if we take till we locked in our cages. Walking my way, and you're dropping your great beers, talking your names and get lost to the pavement. PK, off from the stadium, a prophet to say that you
fucking sleigh with jingle bells and shit. What the fuck was that?
Lost in my brains, if we walk with a gangster, you on to dangerous. I know this ain't no way to live where I'm from. It's the only way there is. I know this ain't no way to live where I'm from. It's the only way there is.
Fucking hell. will happen a third time. First I hear jingle bells, and then I hear what sounds like a fire alarm in somebody else's building. I don't know how the fuck I would hear that. Would that be right across the street from the diner? No, good. Jump out the damn balconies. You put pools in there, you put a bullshit dog park. It's bullshit because there's grass on top of concrete. It's a dog park. It's a green roof. Right next to a tar paper roof. Same building. Way too upbeat.
To do something few human beings. Never gonna be a no man. Die with your gun in your hand. Damn. Say it's all part of God's plan, and all we can do is just try to understand. Never gonna be a no man. Die with your gun in your hand. Damn. Say it's all part of God's plan, and all we can do is just try to understand. Kill my whole life, hot to selling rock. Yeah, the birdie almost gone, and it's barely out the pot. I'ma give it all I got till I'm locked, trapped in a box, stuck in a cell. Yeah, boy, we living in hell. Every scar on my body got a story to tell. Listen closely. You can hear the wind whispering, that's my phrase. Fuck with I don't even either way. Hear the whole world against me. I'ma be okay. I got the sun on my back, yeah, the world on my shoulders. Cocaine, product holding, black flag soldier. To my Catholic hosts, life just further, well, death steps closer. Trust me, boy, you will tell me like a gazelle running with the elephants. Real recognized fate. You got bitch made written all over your face. God, never gonna be a no man. God, what you got in your hand. Damn. See it's so far, God's plan. All we can do is just try to understand. God, never gonna be a no man. God, what you got in your hand. Damn. See it's so far, God's plan. All we can do is just try to understand. When I dream of Monday, see dreams and get cold. To me, that's funny, cause your dreams make my dreams come true. Circle of life, darkness conquers light. I'm slapping on the
damn voice back.
Cause your homie died first, don't worry, we all get a turn. I had to ask the reference, do old dogs get to go to heaven? And if so, I guess I'm good. I guess he understands why I pump crackbacks in the hood, yo. While I'm walking with the black mask, black strap hoodie, yo. Just to pick us up, let them know what's up. Until my number's called, until my time is up, I don't give a fuck. Fuck the world and everybody in it. You play the game, you better play it to win it. With the bottom of the food chain, looking like that. Bitch ass.
I think this camera's racing. It turns the red dots to my whole skin being one hue of pink.
Never gonna be no man. Die, but you gonna
into the fucking darkness.
See, it's all part of God's plan. All we can do is just try to understand. Yo, man, I'm fucking.
Fuck that, I can't.
Oh, yeah. Get in the fucking car and get out of here. I'm coming down and get problems, no way to solve. Going in the chamber and spin the revolver. Problems, no way to solve. Going in the chamber and spin the revolver. Problems, no way to solve. Going in the chamber and spin the revolver. Problems, no way to solve. Going in the chamber and spin the revolver. More weight, more hate, more money, more snakes. They say God's coming, but I think he run late. Don't really matter much with the sword.
5 volts, 6 volts.
I recognize your face in the different differences of God taste. The money in the worst way. Curses before my first birthday. Sometimes I win the vibe when we even broke me. Everyone here when I hurt me. From the sky rays, needles and crack fights. Not the dream sold to a lost soul. Lo and behold, the child hold his own. With his hand on the throne, taking whatever he wants. All I need is a product and a cell phone. Don't worry about me, man, I get my cell phone.
Notorious for that too.
No way to solve. One in the chain and a spin the revolver. No way to solve. One in the chain and a spin the revolver. No way to solve. One in the chain and a spin the revolver. No way to solve. One in the chain and a spin the revolver. Yeah, you wonder what that value is. Besides money in my pocket and this golden bag. And my children only other thing that really matter. If I die today, I wonder what they will remember. Daddy going probably makes it hard around December. Santa Claus always must have hope when I was younger. This whole time I've been trying to survive in the city where the gangs and the drugs thrive. Feel like I'm being buried alive. Look out the window, watch the cops walk by. I stopped looking and accepted I lost my mind. Lord, send me a sign, cause I feel like I'm living in hell. The clubs in the alley beginning to smell. I've been changed to shackles on my way to sell. Take my freedom from me, and they ask me how the hell I feel.
That's the type of ignorant shit they go on the back. I don't even talk to them. They start talking to me, I say something ignorant, they get mad, but they talk to me
No way to solve. One in the chain when I spin the revolver. One in the chain when I spin the revolver. No way to solve. One in the chain when I spin the revolver.
Yeah, I know. I don't think we paid for that.
That gang shit, that's why I believe I came with this on the gang list. I was a kid in the playground, never wanted to play with. Quit school to flip bricks, learn my mathematics and crack addicts. And when the world got cold, I learned to be a little colder. I was trained out the streets of the murder cat to be a soldier. In and out of prison cells, nothing can stop me. See these blades, see these streets, stay a part of me. Even if when I was hungry, I had to rely on the robbery. Around here, these cops just as crooked as us. They only outlaw crap, cause they didn't get their cut. Now I'm the judge, shekels and guns. We say that it happens when you kill guns and sell drugs. I say fuck them, it's gang life, and we don't give a fuck. Nah, we don't give a fuck. We don't give a fuck. It's gang related, motivated by hatred. It's just mad we made it. Rather see it's all applicated. Can you see how you God can save us? Gang related, motivated by hatred. It's just mad we made it. Rather see it's all applicated. Can you see how you God can save us? Forgive me everyone. You'd rather see us locked up inside of a cell. Motivated by this hatred, the hell in the well. I was brought inside this game with the guards that was dead. Black rag on my face, if it's standing salute. Cock it in a motherfucker, 22 on my boot. Cock it on you motherfuckers, no hesitation to shoot. It's like me and you are the front of the news. Ain't no hope for evidence, not a shell in the blood. Black rag on my face, hoodie over the top. No description for the cops or the neighborhood watch. But now these neighbors will watch, they own neighbor get shot. Murder cafe, the place where you can feel safe. It's where soldiers are raised.
When the shop owner said, I'm going to call the cops, I said, go for it. He said, oh, I'm not calling the cops. They know who we are. They ain't get involved at all, because whatever buddy might pull off on me, he doesn't want to get called to testify for the next 10 fucking years. These guys don't want to be part of nuts. Yeah, Africans run fast in a straight line. They don't know nothing about football, eh? Oh, yeah, football, not Canadian hockey. Deaking hockey. There we go. That's football's not even. Yeah, we know football. No, you're not. You're not understanding. Oh, you run in big circles like a big arc where everybody just know, buddy. You don't understand hockey. That's to say hockey. People. I went side to side on him like a sniper was behind me. When I bothered to look back, I couldn't find him. I think he must have fell down. I don't know. I didn't see him. I walked away. I should have kept running. You won't follow me up to tell him, man.
I know lady love me because they miss you. We in the parties, I get swept up in the zoo. She keep me jello with a gang to the shit that I do. I'm a part of it all times, living the truth. I'm on my own chicken food, go back in the loop. You know all the side shit, sanitizer, no. It's not about what the cops do, it's what they do. I'm here in the mood, walk through the fucking world, this is the youth.
But not everybody's fucking bullshit, front ass fucking bullshit. I want to fucking get in my way, man. You own the land, bullshit. You like it, so I've seen that before. People that don't even, never even bought the title to the land, fraudulent or not, never even invested that much. Acting like they're special in the neighborhood. Yeah, let me go there. It's my fault some random fucking idiot immigrant fucking starts with me. You're the one that started a business. He's the one that started robbing people because he thinks he can. Fuck this. Because he thinks I'm literally from South Africa. He can start with me instead of the Fuck you up, make money in my neighborhood. Oh, you want to do business right next to the police station because that's convenient to prevent crime, man? But you won't help out some random citizen? Fuck you. We'll see how the response time is, bro. Oh, I'm blah. That cop, it's all mouthy and wavy, the pistol he's in, he would have put the bullet right through your fucking garage door. You would have got involved one way or another, stupid. You fucking mouthpiece. Are you gonna hit the few lesbian actors, bitches? I don't know. I don't fucking care. They do this shit all the time. I'm supposed to care. I point out who they would hit. All of a sudden I'm talking some fucking shit. This shit happens all the time. Cops point fucking illegal guns at us all the time. We get these random shootings that nobody ever gets investigated for. Unfortunately, those are the cops. Everybody knows it. Oh, I can't believe how bad this hurts. There's got to be some overlap.
I've seen this moment in my
sickle
dreams.
cell and suicide disease because it hurts like a bastard.
I'll make a pact with you. With the gods as our witnesses, let us pledge that the winner will allow the loser all the proper funeral rituals. There are no paths between lions and men.
When we find you, we leave. That's your problem.
What you know about this gang like boy? I'm a soldier, hanging out the motherfucking cell. Independent discipline don't scare me. The
I'm just sitting here waiting for World War III.
Pushing the fish scale. If you wanna fuck with me, I'll run up and leave it alone with empty shell. Yeah,
oh, that's how you open us on purpose. That's how you open us on purpose.
Yeah, I'm the king, the candy. Lord, the jokes, it's a I'm playing. If you really want me to, I'll pull it out. Leave you there on the ground, pouring out. Down slow, hoodie up, head down. You can tell
How to prevent back pain. Are you observing the right day of worship? I know what I want. Mango smelling. There we go. Yeah, that's about right.
I'm my system separating my brain, so like I'm floating on the cloud now. Drifting away from a couple bottles every day. I'll be getting through the day, sitting outside of my body, finally my soul is awake. Talk to him, you can call me safe. Searching for robbery victims in the dark alleyways. We real gang members living in the streets, so in the back. Be the reason why the tactical suited up full rate. Who's the reason why the city
niggas get those C8s and all that bullshit.
Taking over my system, got me loading the case. Now I'm drunk driving, doing up a gate. Oh man, seen the church stick about the store speeding away. Turning over the busy road, taking through the gutter lanes. Guaranteed I get away from being so in the cage. That's what my way is getting me by. Turn my liquor. Yeah, it's getting me by. I smoke my weed. Yeah, it's getting me by. Turn my liquor. Yeah, it's getting me by. I smoke my weed. Yeah, it's getting me by. I drink my liquor. Yeah, it's getting me right. Yeah, it's getting me right.
They're almost emergency bags. They're almost like, I had one of those clear plastic masks. I'm gonna get my nose surgically removed and replaced with just some sort of shapeless. Maybe I'll get a circle with a spinner. Titanium and platinum or something. Just some that won't need much cleaning. Right there. How much trouble is your nose, honestly? That motherfucker hurts and everything. It's fucking right there. It won't get clogged up because it won't, all this will be gone. How much did that cost to get done? It's elective. Just doing electives again. They send me for so much counseling. The whole shit. Do it bird by bird. That's the thickest baby. You can't bring me down. Singing on the clouds, living at the stars. Because you never thought we make it this far. So I'm raising the bar. Step the fuck up, we can step the fuck on. You're fucking smoking rags or whatever. You think every weed does that? Does oregano do that? It's my the birds are flying high. Okay, so the lighting. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Hey, it's in the bed, stupid. Jesus. I'm not really that smart either, bro. Still be breathing, even when I'm still broke. Still be breathing, even when the slick blow. I'll be still riding on a full moon. I'll be still rhyming when I'm all cold. Still be smoking weed when the cancer hurts. Still a broken seed, pushing gas. We don't get scars, no cancer. Still about to go savage, but worse. Must be in a padded room with the drama at the church. I don't know where that fucking, I don't know how you got that rumor to go through the hood like that. So many people go, oh, if you smoke too much weed, you'll get cancer. The DEA did their study to try to prove that. They proved the opposite, and then they fucking tried to hide the study. It was like 74 or something. No, I don't think we'll pay for that one either. I don't know who owns the rights to that one. Shit. Oh, come on. How many followers? I have no idea. 100%. Don't know me, nearly one soldier bought a canoe on me, gang like thoroughbred, nothing can harm me. I'm a man of steel, with my hand on the steel, sick as will when the blood starts to spill. Trust, it don't take much to get your ass killed. Better watch what you say, cause these walls are fear. The police wanna lock me up, they don't give a fuck about my daughter's tears. I hold tight to my destiny gripping me, I'm feeling like I'm kneeling down, I'm on the knee. Lord, forgive me please, but I refuse to be a victim of these streets. That's why I keep the heat, that's why it's hard to sleep when I open. When I die, wonder if heaven's gates will open. Yeah, I'm flying down the highway, all seas behind me, throwing drugs at the window, hope they don't find me. This is the life I chose, yeah, my heart's prove I'm the same car you were following earlier. The license plate, I see you've been harassing my license plate all day. Hey, by the way, that's a francophone license plate. Are you hating on French people, motherfucker? Oh, I got it off right. You should fucking find me for it. Why did you stop right? I didn't see you right away, and then when I did, I figured I'd pull over to a safe place. What do you stop me for? A speeding ticket? What's that got to do with searching my shit? No, you're gonna spread diseases. I gotta compromise the immune system. I can't be having that. Yeah, you smashed the window, watch for like one. Oh, this key don't open that. How about the car? Here's the car. I don't know.
Trust me, dog. You ain't prepared to do what I'm prepared to do. Hold the car. The artillery I got, cut you in half like a chainsaw. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. Back down. Stop. Listen, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Murder in the first degree, homicide in my crib, harassment. She just yelling even when her arm, now she can't speak. It's a cold world that we live in, take it from me. Yeah, in the end, everything I see and have seen is but a dream within a dream. Long days, cold nights, serving feast. Just the life that we live, just the life that we live, motherfucker. Just the life that we live, just the life that we live, just the life that we live, motherfucker. Just the life that we live, just the life that we live, just the life that we live, motherfucker. Just the life that we live, just the life that we live, just the life that we live, motherfucker. Fuck is that new shit, that gang life revolution. You don't wanna fuck with this, I got homie on standby, ready to let it rip. I suggest you close your lips, stop bumping your guards before you hurt someone you love. No remorse for my gun, no regrets for these clips. Cross me and I'll second bout shit. Got an M16, copied up the black market shit. Big guns, big clips, you don't want any part of this. I'ma not leave you retarded shit. We ain't shit, I give a fuck who started it. Try and see how far you get. Force in the stolen whip. Roll through, fuck your whole day up. Fucking cloud, should've paid up. Now the grave digger putting in work. Covering your coffin in dirt. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, he got what he deserved. Just the life that we live, just the life that we live, just the life that we live, motherfucker. Just the life that we live, just the life that we live, just the life that we live, motherfucker. Just the life that we live, just the life that we live, just the life that we live, motherfucker. Just the life that we live,
Usually it goes the black guy, white guy, the Chinese guy, and me, rolling. I'm flying. Oh shit, what is it? Around you, all you see is some little green ticket. One of them plastic license plates. That shit don't bend, dog. That was made by prison labor. This was made by slave labor. Are you listening? You wonder why I want to do French, huh?
Stupid smile, consistent pain in the sorrow. We all live in the kindness borrow. Like city hurricane, I swear they die for the glass. Yeah, the land and the law. Fuck with the South Valley. Just a team with a gun and a black and
wearing that dress and you still get confused.
Like chains weighing me down, holding me tight, never letting me go.
That's blood pool.
See me when you does. Just to understand why I'm a thug, why I'm up late in the control.
What you need was good. We got it.
That's what's up. I'm a sinner. All I know is evil. All my friends are demons. This life is hell.
Bus.
All I know is evil. All my friends are demons.
I guess I'm on a 3 paper now.
I can sleep when I'm dead. Then I'm making money off of my sins. Crucify me, I was never taught how to live. All I know is do what it takes to put food in the fridge. Shackle King was with a name I never heard before. I so recognized it as a tone, and it was time to go. Slugs in my chest, so much blood, I can see the bullet hole. Choked on a couple of last words in the mouth. Lord, yeah, right. I was in the cracks to break the women.
Like I said, I won't even bleed properly. Paramedics will be like, what the fuck is that? What's up with your bullet wound? I guarantee somehow, like no matter what, these assholes will find a way.
All I know is evil. All my friends are demons. This life is hell. All I know is evil. All my friends are demons. This life is hell.
All my friends are demons. lethal, my people might, some of them might end up. I'm not turning on nobody, fuck that shit. Oh, this and that. Started it. Figure out who started it. They talk right now.
Hear the sound as my heart breaks. It's real cold. Full of snakes. What you want me to say? Yeah, I changed. I don't know no other way. Cause it's in the hallway. Police was apartment all day. Took a loss. Still was business as usual. Ain't nothing to a pirate. Coke in the pirates. Die before I break the silence. All I know is going crossbow. Try to call God. All I got was a doubt tone. Now lately, I don't give a fuck about nothing. $1.30 bitch, I ain't cuffing. Plus she probably already owe me something. Standing to the corner, tell her suck a dick.
Hey, why you guys are falling out? I'm going right now.
Judge me. I ain't heartless. I just really use my heart. Let's.
You can go lay down. Oh, I'm not tired. What's wrong? Don't worry about it. Black people problems. Leave me alone.
Grace and presence be the essence. Heaven sent this twisted kids and parents. Serving out a sentence called life. Living hellish. You embellish. You be holding on to everything you cherish. I'm an angel with the gripper wings. And they gleam angelic. With my halo painted black. Flaming crown. My demon jealous. Contemplating with myself. Forget the struggle. Leaves me restless. Competition with some foes that got my back against the fences. All over that fucking GLR. We march forever. Endless. So the gates of hell are sending us prior to our doorstep. With fire at its beams. With the melody. My voice is lyrical abstraction from the acid by the traction. When I stand the winds bake. That's all the action, more contractions, more than ATMs deposit out the assets. King cushion, purple cops for Hollywood on the mask kids. Me and Kid beyond the master chaos, kicking acid. You can try it, it's fantastic, fucking trigger, what a habit.
My Legos is all moved around. I don't know if it's possible. That fast. That's the other thing. My skin's transparent. I see what's going on. You can't hide that shit from me. Oh, put this. What's with me? Allergy medication. That coincidentally would have cost me $12 or some weird shit. Like, what the allergies have to do with anything? It's dumb enough to go buy medication. People can't even give me the right shit. Why would I buy it? Oh, this one didn't work, that one didn't work. Hey, why didn't you give us money and try this one? No, you're not getting any money from me. I think you owe me money for fucking up. Allergy. Yeah, I'm allergic to television tells lies to your vision, so beware. Enemies control your box of cable. There shouldn't be much in the sand. There was apparently.
Trying to make a buck for my cent in the hood. If I could sell a piece to a priest, then I would. Cause I'm about my paper, dog, it's all good. When I roll up, my dough up. Cocky like Rocky Balboa. Product that a devil gon' blow up. Stacking higher than the Twin Towers. Blow up on the scene like a fucking 2 towers. All I want in life is a fucking money shower. So what I got for months is a big cold power. My eyes low faded, smart got raided. Walk never get got, I'm a big made it. Laughing at these suckers, it's all smooth sailing. I'm throwing in my cup in the cup where I'm motherfucking toasted. Puff another blunt to be toasted. If a motherfucker head, then we rolling. So much money, so much richness. All my life, got the first to break, and then it's on. Tell my baby mama I ain't never coming home. So much money, so much bitches. All my life I've been straight tripping. Got the first to break, and then it's on. So I'm in the beast, I ain't never coming home. Boys in the hood, got toys in the hood. Hoes party bumps make noise in the hood. When I think back, dollar sign break that. Fuck a bitch with a fat ass, I'm the master. Sitting in a cell, probably breaking aster. Living in the hell, but my seed not a bastard. Wanna keep it gangster, lane up the faster. Product of the devil, bass beer, crack in the coke.
Look how long it takes. As long as I'm not moving backwards, I'm fucking it up.
You don't understand, I'm on another level. You can't tell me nothing, but try and tell me something. Why the fuck you hating when I'm rolling by something? Probably cause I'm doing big things and you're floating. Cheers to my haters, cheers to my dogs. Life of a gangster, playing till I fall. Trying to stay on top till I'm motherfucking fall. So much money, so much riches. All my life I've been thug living. Got the verse to brick, and then it's all. Tell my baby mama I ain't never coming home. So much money, so much bitches. All my life I've been straight living. Got the verse to brick, and then it's all. Till I'm in the beast, I ain't never coming home. Stole for a heater, now I pack a heater. Money coming quicker than a motherfucking heater. That's sick in the book, sitting with a conversation. You readers, I'm a soldier. To my deceased, on the boulder. Living giving a fuck the weight of the world on my shoulder. Haven't never had a hard clip, yeah, I got this shit. Got bitches, I'm a judge on the cap on the shit. This is how it is, this is how we do in the city. Witty wolf, if I was sheep, I don't feel no pity. Gotta feed a fucking kitty, ever since so it's nitty bitty, kitty trying to make a fucking fuck go a time by a blizzy. Grind for the grizzly, workers be busy. Purple, so got my monkey, I'm dizzy. Faded, so I'm gon' get laid in the city. Packing my heater in case I get so much money, so much riches. All my life I've been thug living. Got to verse the brick, and then it's
Right, so the problems with my chest have to do with dead blood, basically, in my alveoli or whatever in my lungs. But I never, ever, ever spit a blood out of my lungs. And very rarely does blood come out of my nose for any reason. And not long ago, I had these pains. That's why I keep saying it's blood. The one time, it's gelled up dead blood. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you haven't seen the shit we see. It's not like regular shit. It came out of my fucking sinuses. What? Oh, my body somehow deals with fucking blood. I don't know. Like, I guess the only way someone like me could survive is if my body got really good at fucking recycling dead blood. Or I'd just be dead because I'm losing blood all the fucking time. So I'm sure I'm bleeding in the sinuses right now, but I have no idea what's happening to that fucking blood. Because it was just trigeminal neuralgia. Why isn't it affecting anything else? Right. Why isn't it doing something? That's not, I'm not confusing the two, no. And the one doesn't tend to directly relate to the other in any fucking obvious way. Yeah, that makes nailing down both real hard when it comes to the symptoms. Yeah. What's the symptom of MS? Seizures, falling down, fucking epilepsy, right? I don't have MS. What's one of the things that can cause trigeminal neuralgia? Known to cause it. So the suicide disease is a side effect of the MS. But we did CT, we did X-ray, CT, and MRI. They don't know what the fuck's wrong with me. So no, I don't have some fucking defect in my fucking head that makes me crazy per se. Well, that's good for you. I shouldn't say it quite that way. I'm not an expert though. So. You said it doesn't. Yeah, no, I might have something. It's in the blood. Something about this blood.
Yeah. Gang Life Records, the kid. Yeah. Feeling fine. You know what it is. Yeah, you killing them, man. You killing them, man.
Your drop.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop my shine. Just lost it all today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine. Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop my shine. Just lost it all today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine. Woke up this morning like that. I just lost 100 grand. It's hard to fathom, it's hard to understand. I came from the block with holes in my socks, pushed day and night. Now I never miss the chop, worked hard for everything I ever got. Still struggle never stops. These cops, they want me in a box. Stop, makes my heart ache. Cause I got 4 kids that miss me when I call away. Shit, life's a trip. Kiss my baby goodbye. Yeah, this is it. I probably ask God for forgiveness. I know God don't exist. I'd rather rip pages from this Bible, roll the weed up, slit my wrist, and drink my blood from a teacup. I ain't probably come out violent. No worries, cause the crack house always high. When you're damn right, I got the right to remain violent. Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop my shine. Just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine. Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop
I did this because I had to.
just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine. Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop my shine. Just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine. Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop my shine. Just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ski mask and gloves, late nights, pockets full of drugs, and on the snub. How could I not fall in love? Life in the fast lane, I like with no brakes. Eyes on the prize, it's a man's game. Around here, they killing over chump chains. My enemy shooting close range, aiming at my brain. I do my main thing.
It's all fucking talkative.
See the fire.
Oh, you don't know doing things? You don't know doing things? You don't know doing things? You know what it's about? No idea, right? I know exactly what all this shit's about. I have no idea what the fucking all it is. Juneteenth sounds retarded.
And you can find out for yourself. And looking forward to the
You
future.
heard me say, what the fuck is that? I saved this for someone. I can't remember why. Did I know what it was before? Maybe. I might have heard reference to it. Did they talk about it here? No.
Oh yeah, I'm
It's a holiday, yeah, because you want to celebrate killing niggas, I know.
just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine.
No, you want the niggas to be there to celebrating you killing me. No, fuck that. You don't talk about what day you celebrate.
Just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine. Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop my shine. Just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine. Oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. Ain't nothing stop my shine. Just lost the dog today, but I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I'm feeling fine.
It's not tokens, it's tokenism. It's tokenism, the whole money system we got up there.
Yeah, yeah. Gang Life Records, Gang Life Yeah, I'm on this back. Yeah. Hunger driving my motivations, no tolerance for the short of patience. Skip gold, do not collect money. That's the shit that got me dreaming robberies. When pops left it with the flop that bothered me. Got a problem, load the weapon, that's how you solve it, that's what it taught to me. And it's how your face starting to bother me. Put me in the direction where the bottle be. Guess that's just how I was born to be. Some come to this world with diamonds and pearls, some come to poverty. But no one that teach us right and wrong, how could you say that we wrong? This is all we know, so gotta be right. Or maybe it's left, but it's all we got left. Not the dog that tell my last breath. Truly, peace and love to the ones that knew me, and fuck the rest. I mean it, and she know when I walk up this door, it might be for the last time. They say the stars burn the brightest right before they die. That's why I tell her I love her just in case the day's my day to shine. Father, forgive me for I sin, and I said I promise sin again. Tell me whose blood is this on my hands, cause I can't remember. But my next goes for Leslie in the room. My thugs, on drugs, tough slugs, great dogs, now
You catch the subtle reference here? I may not quote it though. Let me take this second.
Convenient family protection packages are now available. Order from home at
Where the diamonds and pearls come from.
and have your shipment delivered straight to your door with free shipping within Canada. Order online, safetymasks.ca. Now the weekend business report.
I'm Chris McCusker. It is a tough time for Canadian job seekers, and a new study paints a cloudy picture going forward as well. Darlene Minitel is country manager with Manpower Group Canada.
When we did the Q3 outlook, it was a pretty dim outlook for employment hiring. We have a 21% decrease compared to Q3 of 2019, and we've got about 19 percentage points from Q2.
But some industries are hiring.
The manufacturing and the non-durable sectors report the highest outlook of hiring, followed then by the service sector.
People got to buy them more of
the
it,
construction
stupid.
sector
Jesus
anticipates a
Christ.
bleak outlook. Probably the weakest of all the sectors in Canada.
Okay, so based on this, what is your advice to job seekers?
Even in this, I guess, economic and health crisis that we're in now, there are
They're going to be the first ones to come up with the money to buy more to fucking put the factory back on.
The health sector are hiring. So there are opportunities.
You can wait another 10 years for your fridge and mattress. You have to. If shit really hits the fan, you'll be like, oh, sure glad I bought this fridge in 2017. 2026.
It's really important for them to understand who's hiring and where they're hiring. And if they don't have the skills necessary for the jobs that are hiring, then I would suggest that they take a look seriously at training.
Darlene Minitel is country manager with Manpower Group Canada. And at the Business Center, I'm Chris McCusker.
Even if you love renovating, sometimes it helps to hire a professional. Just like I did for this radio ad. Dennis, could you read the next bit?
Certainly. Until July 1st at Rona and Lowe's, it's the Installation Services Blitz. Get 10% back on a Rona or Lowe's gift card for any air conditioning, roofing, or kitchen installation project.
If you want to bet, be ready to kill for it. If you want to bet, be ready to kill for it. All my thugs, pump drugs, dog slugs, great stuff. It's that early morning hustler shit. Cocaine in the pot, stirring till it's thick. Throw some ice in the mix and shock it. That's how you rock that shit. Now here comes
1 year ago,
abracadabra, bitch.
$5,000.
Baby mama's welfare check. This the life, yeah. Fuck you, pay me. I brought the bitch with me just to show you I ain't playing. All the goons in this motherfucker know what I'm saying.
Semi-detached. It's not even fully detached.
But first you gotta find me, so come find me. You bitch ass, punk ass cops, y'all can kiss on my cock.
I don't know if they rented it out or not.
Never stop. Every bump of these tracks, even after a block, even after my heart stops. I'm here to teach the next generation. Say fuck the cops. Same way I was taught. Yeah, same way I was taught. Yeah, fuck the cops. Fuck the cops. All my thugs, pump drugs, dump slugs, great thugs. Nah, you ain't one of us. If you want it, better be ready to kill for it. If you want it, better be ready to kill for it. All my thugs, pump drugs.
Whoa, did I yell too loud there? Oh. I don't give a fuck with that right now. We're not listening to the top of the hour, are we?
And weather. This is 680 News, Toronto.
What the fuck's the difference between a sling blade and a sickle?
It is Saturday, June 13th. I'm
When
Leo
did a sling
Johansson,
blade
and I'm Asher Roth. Here's what's making news this hour.
For GTA visitors on the first weekend of Stage 2 for most of the province, while Ontarians make the adjustment to the new concept of social circles. Two peaceful protests against racism and police brutality set for the city today.
Oh, you're on the keyword black, eh?
One at Melbourne Town Center. It's a big anniversary. Your 2019 NBA champions.
Great stuff. Nah, you ain't one of us. You want to bet that you ready to die for it.
You had 6 fucking whatever. Was it 6 shots right now or 6 people? What the fuck happened? Where's number 6 coming from? Tell me best 6.
Vegas is one of its 200 cities. Meanwhile, the food rally has gotten underway at the Charles Schwab Challenge.
Oh, my fucking foreign interest. Stupid. Did they ever call you, like, they must make fun of your name a whole bunch of ways.
Yeah. These are the dreams of a G, motherfucker. Yo, yeah, game like records, you can't get the fuck shit off. What? Yeah, baby, PK, what? Fuck you in the fucking house. What? All that talking on your white ain't scaring me. Keep on pushing me, it's like you tearing me. Like I won't pop, 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 pop. Leave me there to bleed, ride. So they bury me. All that talking on your white ain't scaring me. Keep on pushing me, it's like you tearing me. Like I won't pop, 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 pop. Leave me there to bleed.
Used to skip class, the make cash is the one I never passed. Teacher always talking about something I don't really care about. You see, when I'm done here, gotta go home. And sometimes home ain't the place you wanna go. When the crowd of room, I feel alone. He lost his mother who did die in his arms. And then they wonder why he acts so he causes others harm. It was even written against me back then. I was never supposed to be shit.
Oh, you're trying to figure out the difference between a sling blade and a sickle. This is you fucking white people.
From my head, get the fuck out of here. Y'all ain't killing shit. I was born for a greater purpose. Because of that, I know I make you nervous. Careful, there's a demon lurking underneath the surface. I do this in the memory of my dog dead and deceased. Every scar, every tattoo, he's something to me.
Well,
stage 2.
Wow.
Mayor Sandy Brown tells me the region's medical officer
got a case to do. I guess there's no reason to split all those stuff. Fuck all these places with jails. Sure, economy depends on the jail. Yeah, sure does now. Fuck you. I'm not paying nothing to visit no law. All the people coming to visit will have to spend fuck out. Oh, you don't like that.
Booked up, masks not mandatory on patios, and some stores already open in stage 1 areas. He just doesn't see this happening. First weekend of stage 2 for most of Ontario councils. All of us get to enjoy gatherings of up to 10 people and new social circles of up to 10 people where physical distancing doesn't have to be maintained. Premier Doug Ford says this measure would be impossible to legally enforce.
The social circle police aren't going to be knocking on your door. We trust you're going to be doing the right thing and just follow the protocols.
Meanwhile, new from the Ford government this morning, weddings and funerals can now have more people in attendance with the max set at 50 people for an outdoor event, while indoor ones will be capped at 30% of a venue's capacity. Receptions for both, though, still can only have 10 people. Reporting live, Stuart McGinn, 680 News.
680 News Time, 9:05. The call for an end to systemic racism in Canada continues this weekend. 680's Joey Keeney previews demonstrations expected.
Where is it?
Today.
Where is Malvern?
Expected to gather at Christie Pitts this afternoon at 1 to march to
That's the white neighborhood
promoting
first.
anti-racism and protesting against police brutality. The Toronto branch of Remember the 400 is behind this one. The organization's website says their mission is to tell the true story of black slaves that landed on the shores of the Americas 400 years ago. The organization says they are marching to support initiatives that right the wrongs of this dark past.
They're all slaves. All about it. Second Amendment.
Helping Neighborhoods Implement Change is holding a unity march that starts at 12:30.
Remember, you'll always be slaves. For 400 years and still you're slaves. Be careful, they fucking program your head with this.
I'm Joey Keeney. You're listening to All News Radio 680 News. With the
people
recent
think the
deaths of
first ones
DeAndre
that get
Campbell
their
and
heads
Regis
are shot the
Korchinski,
fuck out of the people they couldn't ran.
police officers
As soon as they got out of there, they skipped the fucking contract with those people that they got the guns from. Deal with the devil changes you, fuck you.
With a former SIU investigator about whether or not they should.
The question is being raised
I'm not
once
looking
again
down on
as the
nobody's
province's police watchdog
bloodline.
revealed
They want all of us to
yesterday
go.
that
So
an
I'm just
officer who
fucking
pulled the
the
trigger
footage.
at
I'm not the
Renton
only one.
complex back in April,
Not a slave.
killing a young black man, still has not given an interview or provided his note to the Special Investigations Unit 2 months after the incident.
They even provide them with guns, which civilians don't have. And so with that, I think it's become increased accountability.
The family of DeAndre Campbell, the man killed by Peel police, say the 26-year-old had mental health issues and was the one who called 911 in the first place for help. Now, Peel police add that officers typically do remain on guilty of anything.
Which is employment law, you morons.
680 News Time, 9:07.
In fact, it's contract law. It's not the city's problem. What their subcontractor has to deal with under employment law.
Won their first NBA championship. Simon Bennett takes a look back.
Oh yes, it's been 1 year since this.
Shots. How many people gave him 6 shots or something? Oh, you don't like me saying that.
Lots of memories from that night and the massive parade that followed days later.
Something's fucking with my internet every time you tell me. You're dropped out.
Really flew by quickly. Still like very much right here as an amazing experience, a special, really special experience.
Of course, the Raptors have yet to be dethroned with the pandemic causing a sports shutdown. The NBA plans to resume play in late July with the playoffs stretching into the fall. I'm Simon Bennett.
If it doesn't love a bobblehead, especially if it's one of the men who led the Raptors to that championship, a 680 comes just in time
You
for
guys think
the
you got it bad,
anniversary
but
of that
like, I'm
historic
trying to show
title win.
people what's wrong with my skin. I can't even show them. Your problems is stand right out like, nah, so I know that. I fucking show them this. So what is that? What is that? White, bro, what's wrong with you? I'm not white. You're not white. You're white right there. Yeah, that's the problem. You guys are so easy to something. You have to like white girls.
The third one has him waving the Canadian flag from a moment of the celebration. And the fourth one has him riding in the truck. Probably my favorite one, he's waving to the fans.
Nurse says he's excited to be teaming up with the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum to bring fans this bobblehead series to commemorate last year's
my favorite one was him riding in the truck, and I thought we were remembering somebody that died. Damn it. Does George Floyd get a bobblehead?
And Active TO returns again this
You honor all these other people with bobbleheads? What the fuck?
Toronto streets will be shut
They said he was a big dude. No, Big Floyd.
This includes
What about
the
Aaron
eastbound
Garner?
lanes
He's
of
just giving like a
Windermere to
bobblehead with a
Stadium
backpack
and from
full of
Leslie
cigarettes
to
or
just
something.
south of Woodbine. Bayview
not.
will also be shut
Find
down
that
from
offensive.
Front to Rosedale, and River from Gerrard to Bayview is off limits this weekend as well. The city says the goal of Active TO
River
is to allow
why
people
Drew-
the space
what-
to walk, run, and
I
cycle
don't
on city
understand what
streets
the
while
purpose
also
is. So the
maintaining
white
proper
people don't
physical
have to go through
distancing
down to
during the
Regent Park to
COVID-19
get to
pandemic.
fucking
The
distillery.
closure went
That's
into
what it's
effect
about.
at 6 this morning, and the road
Well,
news you need to
bypass
know.
at some point.
You'll always hear the latest on 680 News.
We redeveloped all this shit, so it doesn't matter
680
anymore.
news time 9:09. Time for Cottage Country
one
traffic
problem
on
at
the
a time,
nines
please.
with
One
Farm
problem at a
Andrews.
time,
This report is
please,
brought to you by
please.
the
I can
structure
put it
between
on
the
rice.
418
I
and
can
Holt
put
Road.
it on
Two
a
left lanes are
burger.
closed.
I can
Not
put
really
it on a
causing much of a
salad.
delay. Looks good as you
I
continue
can put
through
it on a
Cumberland
hot
and
dog.
Grafton.
I can
Looking
throw
at
it on
the
the
southbound
barbecue.
418 through
can't.
Top Road. We do have
Oh,
construction
it's
through there
burgers and
and the
hot
right
dogs
lane.
on the barbecue.
Northbound 400,
Thank you.
the
That's
ramps to and
helpful.
from
Because I
Ditch are
didn't know
closed
how
for
to make
construction.
burgers
So
and
northbound
hot dogs.
400 and Ice Drive.
Dutch
As you
people.
make your way through King into Barrie, and northbound Highway
Just sell
11
to
looks good north of the
everybody.
split through
Sell
really
to
Ravenhurst.
everybody.
No recent troubles to pass along.
What
With
are
Cottage
these?
Country
Burger and
traffic
hot
on the
dog.
nines, I'm
I
Farm
make
Andrews.
those.
And
Oh,
now the 680 News
you're right.
gas price
Barbecue.
update and processed
Some
rice dropped 3
fucking
cents
Dutch
at midnight
fucking
to
diabetes
97.9
apple
cents a liter at most GTA stations. Still ahead, traffic and weather together next.
Think I'm lying? The text is white on black. Which one can you read better?
Getting insurance that fits can be challenging. Ask for the Commonwealth for insurance that fits your life here.
Get hooked on Bolts Plus. Bolts Plus is your fastener specialist, plus so much more. Check out their massive showroom filled with
I
an
don't know,
extensive
man.
inventory of
I'm
industrial
not
and
gonna go through
safety
the whole
supplies,
process of
such as
reading
abrasives,
words, but
adhesives, and lubricants,
it's
anchors,
as much
storage
thing.
bins, paints and coatings, cutting tools, chain hooks, and wire rope, plus a huge stock of DeWalt and Milwaukee power tools. Let their knowledgeable staff source your hard-to-find items. Bolts Plus, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Many locations to serve you. Visit boltsplus.ca.
You try to fake being Dutch for taxi.
680 News Time 9:11. Time for traffic and
The only
weather
people
together
that can
on
eat
the
fried
ones with a look at your
onions
drive.
that
Here's
come in
Zach
a
Bodenstein.
Right now,
little
construction shutting down the
reusable
southbound
Tupperware.
400
We reuse that, eh?
bottom end of it, 407
Why
down
they
to the
marked it
401
all for how big it
limits
is there?
until
375
Monday morning.
mils.
So a full weekend, and we have this
97
area of the highway
millimeters, just in
closed,
case
and that
you
means
wonder how wide
everybody's
the
going to
fuck
be
it is.
forced off at the 407
So
unless
you know
you
what you
exited
consider.
earlier on the southbound 400. Eastbound 401 ramp to Guelph
Dutch
line
people.
is closed. We are getting word of some new
Oh,
construction.
they'll remember the
just coming
package.
in westbound 401 at Mississauga Road. They're getting ready to block the right lane in that area. And right now, the DVP 404 in pretty good shape, both north and south into and out of downtown. Active TO still in place, so eastbound QEW ramp to the Lakeshore Park lawn shut down. So is the eastbound Lakeshore for a couple of stretches. First from Windermere to Stadium, then again from Leslie to Woodbine. We have Bayview closed north and south, front to Rosedale Valley, and River Street shut down from Bayview to Gerrard. With a look at your forecast, here's Denise Andriacci.
Well, partly cloudy conditions out there. Quite a bit of sunshine over the next few days. Winds out of the north at Pearson right now. And it's keeping temperatures a little cool this morning and below seasonal for the entire weekend. Overnight tonight, lows near 7 degrees, sunny and 19 for tomorrow. Right now it is 13 at Pearson. Your guaranteed high, 19 degrees.
680 News Time, 9:12.
The City of Toronto will be offering summer camps for children between the ages of 6 and 12 over 8 weeks at approximately 150 locations. Camp TO programs will meet health guidelines designated with Toronto Public Health and in alignment with provincial health guidelines for day camps and to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Guidelines include less campers, physical distancing, mandatory health screening, and enhanced facility cleaning. Those camps are expected to kick off July 13th. Programs will be available for viewing today at toronto.ca/camps. The fastest way, though, to sign up your kids is at efund.toronto.ca.
We call half stepping. That's what we're talking. Hey, white people, this is another one.
Stories and sports coming up in 60 seconds.
Yeah, I guess I did. I didn't realize it was
Ontario, you're making a difference to keep people safe from COVID-19, and we all need to continue our efforts to protect each other. Get tested if you're worried you may have COVID-19 or have been exposed to the virus. Practice physical distancing. Stay 2 meters apart.
Why do I need a centerfold for recycling? You're telling me exactly. Throw this.
Wash hands frequently.
This goes
inside
to the blue bin.
Stay safe. Save
This
lives.
is a recycling bin starter.
Ontario.ca/coronavirus.
All I need is
Paid
the
for
bin.
by the Government of Ontario.
Hello, neighbor.
Hello.
Is this new fence to socially distance yourselves?
No, not at all. It's just for our dog.
And a new Subaru, I see.
Yes, again, just for the dog.
Well, you can't recycle black plastic. You can't put recycling in black bags. Like, what's
just to keep our distance at all times.
Oh, Canada Day first. Thank you. Is there anything else useful this month? Nothing.
With rates of 0.5%. Make an appointment to safely shop for an all-new Subaru today. This is All News Radio, 680 News.
Mix of sun and cloud. We're sitting at 11 degrees outside our studio. Good morning from the 680 News Broadcast Center in downtown Toronto.
Why are we
I'm Leah
blowing the money now?
Johansson.
And I'm Asher Rob here with the top stories
Seriously,
this
if we're
hour.
$2.7 billion
Including hair
short,
salons and outdoor
they're
patios
not
opening
allowed
up
to
in some
borrow it.
areas of the
And
province
Dougie
that are
doesn't know
now
where to
moving
get
to
it from.
stage 2 of
Or
the
he can borrow.
COVID-19 reopening
Right.
plan.
How much
Toronto
more is he
is
going to
among the
borrow?
areas that will have to wait,
We
but
started with
residents are
350
able
billion.
to
We
travel
think.
to
They
any
won't tell
area
us the
that is
exact
open.
numbers.
More anti-racism protests
Oh, that's a
expected
convention.
today. One beginning at Christie Pitts this afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Largest
They will march to
non-sovereign
Queen's
debt in
Queen's
the
Park.
world.
That is
I think we
organized by the
qualify
Toronto
as
branch of Remember the
I think we're
400.
the only state
And coming
in
up
Canada.
after
We're not a
sports, it's another
province, we're a
edition of
state.
680 News Gets Answers. And today's question, is it too
9
early to
provinces,
reopen
1 state,
childcare
3
centers
territories.
as many
There we go.
schools are still closed?
Give us the credit line. Oh, do you want to pitch in on those payments? No, I didn't think so.
Time now for 680 Sports from Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Here's Maria St. Cobain.
If and when NHL action resumes, expect to see some games in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah, because everybody associates hockey with the fucking desert, eh? Jesus, could the Russians go?
The city is one of its 2 hub centers with an
Niagara
official announcement
Falls.
expected by June 22nd. However,
Vegas.
Sportsnet's Chris Johnson
Oh, there's
says
an empty
expect
place I
sooner.
could use the
As for
tourism
the
money.
other hub center, Johnson says it depends on how the Canadian government chooses to
Oh,
enforce
if you
the
do
14-day
get to do this, you're going to have
those
fucking
entering the
tourists all
country.
over the place trying to break in and see these
Meanwhile, in NBA news, according to
motherfuckers.
several
But they're
reports,
there and they're
Nets star
drunk.
Kyrie Irving led a
Or they're going to
conference
see
call
them in
with
the
over
casino
80
when they
players
say they're
last night,
not
with
leaving their
several
room and
speaking out about not
quarantine.
supporting the
Yeah.
resume season
One
due
thing
to the
after
social
another.
unrest nationwide.
And you're all going to fuck
COVID-19
the same workers. I
concerns.
guarantee
According
you
to Sean
always
Shriney
do
of The
girls
Athletic, Kevin
talk,
Durant,
eh?
Chris Paul, Donovan Mitchell, and Nate indicated several players were not
You gotta
happy
get
that
away
they
from
weren't able
somebody
to
that
vote
don't
on the
talk.
return to play plan. As for now, training camps are set to begin July 9th in Orlando, with the season tipping off, with the season resuming July 31st. Happening now in Fort Worth, Texas, the 3rd round of the Charles Schwab Challenge has teed off. Carol Varner III is your leader at 11 under. Jordan Spieth and Bryson DeChambeau are tied for second, 1 shot back. Corey Connors is the top Canadian. He's tied for 12th at 7 under. Sports at 15:45 past every hour. Running time at sportsnet.ca/590.
680 News Time, 9:17.
At Sleep Country, we're real sleep experts, and we're available online or by phone to help you find your best sleep. Because whatever your sleep needs, we're here to listen. Whether you like a hard mattress and your husband likes a soft one, your daughter's back from school and all of a sudden she needs a bedroom, or you need a mattress with more back support, let a real sleep expert match you to a better sleep. Stores are now open. Visit us online to find a store near you. Sleep well,
You know what?
stay well. Sleep Country.
All I'm gonna say is there's a lot of bad words that your bad word filters don't catch,
Which
eh?
money would you like to save? Just by doing something you're already doing.
My mind may go dirty places, but it's you people's
How about
fault.
30%? With Allstate, safe drivers can save 30%.
You can't say those words. Oh, okay, well, I guess we'll have to substitute, come up with more swear words, right?
That's right, 30% just by
Nick Summer Night's Dream. King Lear. Oh, I knew I had that. Hold on. Hemingway to Salami. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Terms and conditions
I'm all academic. That's
680 News Time, 9:18. Quebec's police watchdog says it's been called in to investigate a report of an RCMP-involved fatal shooting of a man in New Brunswick.
The Independent Police Investigation Agency says it's been told that the Mounties responded to a report of a disturbed person in the Miramichi area on Friday night. It says preliminary information indicates RCMP officers found the man armed with a knife in a building and used an electronic stun gun on him several times without success. Investigators say that the man was allegedly shot.
Who dumped all the fucking drugs out there, right?
Was then given first aid and transported to hospital, but was declared dead. Rob Westgate, the Canadian Press.
680 News Time, 9:18. 680 News is working for you, trying to get you answers to any questions you have about COVID-19. And in this edition of 680 News Gets Answers, our listeners ask Toronto's Associate Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Vini Dubé, to think too early, if they think rather it's too early to open childcare centers since schools are closed. She says childcare centers will look much differently than you remembered.
So there will be some restrictions on numbers. The cleaning and disinfection, I mean, child care centers are already very good, but that's been increased. There's going to be screening, so before you can even enter, in fact, parents won't even be able to go in and drop their kids off. They'll drop them off on the outside and do a screening form to make sure that everyone is healthy, that no one has symptoms as well. And if someone gets sick, they will be moved aside so that they cannot perhaps infect others.
If you have questions and want them answered, you can send them to us at 680news.com/answers or call our listener line at 416-872-6800. And time now for Cottage Country traffic on the 9s. Here's Barb Andrews.
And this report is brought to you by ExploreNet Internet. If you're traveling on the 400 headed northbound, the ramps to and from Finch are closed, but otherwise northbound 400 looks good as you head through King into Barrie. Northbound Highway 11 looks good through really
what's the best toilet paper to use? I would think it was Malaxi Hydro, whatever.
QEW, we do have some construction over the Burlington Skyway in the left lane. Not really causing a delay through there.
And I lost my sense of smell.
Between the 418 and Hope Road, 2 left lanes closed for construction. Again, not really seeing a delay as you make your way through that area. With Cottage Country traffic on the 9s, I'm Barb Andrews.
680 News Time, 9:20. Starbucks is adjusting its presence in Canada with plans to close up to 200 coffee shops. 680 business editor Chris McCusker explains.
The Seattle-based chain says it intends to restructure its company-operated business in Canada under a 2-year plan. Now, the details were included in a letter to shareholders. In that letter, the company outlined a number of broad changes it was introducing as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic and evolving consumer habits. The coffee chain says some of the Canadian stores up for closure will be repositioned, which suggests they could either move to a new area or
accelerate your internet with ExploreNet LTE service. Now with unlimited data.
It's some weirdo shit last year that was 2 years ago. It's not just kicking the dudes out of the store. The response was this knee-jerk thing. Look at us.
Dealing with construction on the drive. Lias southbound 400 closed for the bottom portion of it. 407 down to the 401, which means if you are taking the southbound 400, you might be forced off at the 407 unless you exit earlier. So if you do want to exit earlier, Highway 7 is a good option for you. From there, take it east or west, make your way south on a number of different routes. You've got options with Islington, Kiel, Jane, Weston, or Highway 27. If you're on the westbound 407, keep in mind ramp to the north 427 still shut down for construction. Westbound 401, there's some moving maintenance in the right lane through Mississauga Road, and eastbound on the 401 at ramp to Ball still shut down. Active TO in place, so eastbound QEW ramp to the Lakeshore at is also off limits for you today. With a look at the extended forecast, here's Denise Andriachi.
A lot of sunshine in the long-range forecast, just a high pressure. I mean, it is a little fresh this weekend, a little below seasonal, very comfortable, very high UV index. Still feeling like the official start to summer is around the corner, but you'll really start to feel that as we move into Father's Day weekend. So the middle of next week towards next weekend, it's going to start to get hot and sticky again. But In the meantime, just very comfortable conditions. You're
fine.
Don't forget, 680 News is the only radio station with a
Giving us
weather
clothing,
guarantee.
like, wear a
Today's
jacket
jackpot
and a
is at
t-shirt and a sweater and a
$2,900. Head to
parka and a
680news.com
vest
where you
and
can find out how to become a member of our
a
Insider
and a
Club.
and a
Coming up
mask
at 9:30, we're getting new details
and a
from the province that are
balaclava.
now
Why
allowing
can't we all just wear
weddings
ski
and
masks in
funerals to
Canada?
have
You think we would all have
people
one in our fucking
outdoors.
closet? Like
Receptions, though,
winter
still
Canada.
maintaining
We all
that
like a winter kit and a summer kit.
10% max. We have the latest with
Flip-flops
Stuart
in the
McGinn
summer.
coming up at 9:30.
Get hooked on Bolts Plus. Bolts Plus is your fastener specialist, plus so much more.
We got
Check
the
out their
maple
massive
syrup
showroom
drill
filled with an
bit set
extensive
aside.
inventory of industrial and safety supplies, such as abrasives, adhesives, and lubricants, anchors, storage bins, paints and coatings, cutting tools, chain hooks, and wire rope, plus a huge stock of DeWalt and Milwaukee power tools. Plus their knowledgeable staff source your hard-to-find items. Bolts Plus, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Many locations to serve you. Visit boltsplus.ca.
Just flew over Highway 400 and southbound 400 is slow approaching tests in the south of Rutherford. Bit of snow coming down through there.
And weather.
This moisture-laden Texas low has triggered widespread rainfall warnings across the GTA.
When you
I'm gonna book in and out of fucking girl.
680 News
I
Time,
think they're in the block to the
9:24.
bunker.
Construction is closing a very
Kind of
popular route on your drive this weekend. 680's Zach Bogenstein explains how that'll affect your commute and how to get around it.
With Ontario starting to open up, a portion of a major
I'm
highway
stuck
is
somewhere
shutting
long
down.
enough to read the damn how to go a
Obviously,
freaking
the
orchid
timing isn't
book.
the best with the
Market
cottage
things,
country
I'll give it a
surge
shot.
expected this weekend. Construction is closing the southbound 400 from the 407 to the 401, and it'll be off limits until the early morning commute on Monday. Since the main route back from the north, so if you're headed south of the 400 this weekend, you'll be forced to exit at the 407 unless you get off a little bit earlier at Highway 7. If you do that, from there you have many options to head south from Highway 27, Jane, Weston, Islington, or Keele. And if you want to head east, you can take the South 404 DVP right down to the downtown core. We'll have live updates on the volume in the area every 10 minutes in our traffic reports. I'm Zach Bogenstein.
Still ahead, the weekend business report up next. 680 News Time, 9:25.
Just build a big facility with a pump and a pipe
concert experience. So Budweiser Stage is bringing the show home to you. Budweiser Stage at Home, a premier music experience connecting you to your favorite artists off the earth.
Let's search all this shit. Oh, whoa. You don't like to say certain things at all, eh? What is unstable about the connection? It only happens when I say certain words. I don't believe that. Oh, it's this one.
Apartments are open and sanitized regularly. We're following the physical
Whatever the fuck is doing that is not based on what it says it is. And it's not because my intercontainer connection suddenly cut out.
Most new Toyota models. So if you're in the market for a Toyota,
Another reason I use everything to death and work it to death. If it was going to be fucking rickety and fucked up, we would have shown that by now.
680 News Time, 9:26. Time now for the weekend business report.
I'm Richard Southern. I'll tell you, I don't know if there's any.
Full tank of unleaded. I got a full tank unleaded. If you don't fucking turn it down, I'm not turning it up.
1,000 patio rating officer. It's important. Mike, the company's going to use some parking lots to build the new patio.
A lot of our sites we
If we do that, that's ghetto.
on the pad of the site. So, the parking space
No matter how much we don't get us, that teeth kissing thing came from my youth.
But in some instances where we don't have the appropriate spacing on our, pad of our restaurants, we will use the parking spaces.
Will the franchise owners be on the hook for paying for these patios?
Historically, the equipment that goes into the restaurant, like patio seatings, has been something that's a franchise owner investment. We're actually covering over 40% of the costs of these patios. We want to make an investment with them.
This is temporary until we get a handle on COVID, or do you anticipate these patios?
Convert a regular plate to a personalized plate. Why would I do that?
Long term, we think that they're another great outlet for guests to enjoy our restaurants.
Mike Hancock, COO at Tim Hortons, and at the Business Center on Richard Center.
When the time is right for your
That is
business to reopen,
$54.60. You know what it doesn't tell me? What I'm trying to fucking figure out.
Industries is a licensed producer of
PPE,
including face shields that are 100%
says
made in
that's
Canada. Nortex face shields are Class 1 medical grade and feature a universal fit and anti-fog design, and are now available to bulk purchase in a range of styles to CND.com. COVID-19 has turned the way we do business on its head.
As a result, we have had to adapt to the new normal. But what does the new normal look like? It's not the same for everyone, and it seems to constantly fluctuate. This week on Meeting Accepted, we discuss where we go from here, what lies ahead for the business world, and how do we make sense of it.
Watch Meeting Accepted.
Why do you just play music, man? I know. I want to, but it's like the whole fucking half the purpose of what I'm doing here is to fucking show people what's really being blasted in their heads, eh?
680 News Time, 9:29. Time now for Cottage Country traffic on the 9s with Barb Andrews.
Is my internet totally unstable, or what are they, bombarded? You could easily bombard, what do they call it? Denial of service.
We have the ramps to and from Fitchwood for construction. Otherwise, a light drop on that northbound 400 as you make your way north of King. It's a very northbound highway 11 looks good north of the Split, making your way through Rulia and Gravenhurst. Haven't come across any recent troubles. And eastbound 411, light drop, but you do want to keep in mind we have some construction between the 418 and Holt Road. 2 left lanes are blocked with Cottage Country traffic on the 9s. I'm Barb Andrews.
The Skoka Realtor Bob Clark is excited for you to tour his fabulous lineup of lakefront properties on the Big Three. Head to mymuskokacottages.com to see for yourself.
680 News Time, 9:30.
Number 1 for news in Toronto.
Fine, order. No, where the fuck to go? I gotta read 6 paragraphs, so if you want to do this, click on this little piece of text. Dougie, you fucking people are not hustling.
Patio this weekend, but some regions outside the GTA are worried about Stage 1 visitors in Stage 2 territory.
2 organizations holding peaceful demonstrations today. Remember, the 400 is marching from Christie Pitts to Queen's Park, and the Unity March is happening at Melbourne Town Centre in Scarborough.
Love bare naked ladies and walk off the earth? You can catch both bands on a new episode of Budweiser Stage at Home, airing tonight on City TV.
It's a French field this week, turning up the heat next week. Several NBA players are reportedly concerned about resuming the season. Meanwhile, 1 year ago today, the Raptors won it all. Sports at 45.
And coming up in business, choosing between fighting the pandemic and reopening the economy is a false dilemma, according to an international body. We'll hear from the head of the OECD.
680 News Time, 9:31.
And that means it's time for traffic and weather together on the ones with Toronto's most frequent traffic reports. It's Zach Bodenstein. All right, Asher, right now we're dealing with construction. Again, southbound 400 closed, 407 down to the 401. You'll be hearing this every 10 minutes all weekend here on 680. Full closure of the south 400, 407 to the 401. This is for construction. You'll be forced off at the 407 once you get down there. Meantime, if you're traveling on the northbound 400, not much doing, as you've been hearing in Barb's Cottage Country reports. Westbound 401, we briefly had an issue at McCowan in the Express, but it's now gone, so we're only dealing with some moving maintenance on the West 401 through Mississauga Road. That's in the right lane. Eastbound 401 ramp to Guelph line. That's closed for construction. And active TO shutting down the eastbound QEW ramp to the Lakeshore at Parklawn. That's because East Lakeshore is closed Windermere to Stadium and again Leslie to Woodbine. We have active TO shutting down Bayview and River Street north and south. Bayview from Front to Rosedale Valley, and then River from Bayview to Gerrard. Your next report coming up at 9:41. Right now, here's the forecast with Denise Andriachi.
Lots of sunshine out there, and we'll continue with that for the next several days. Winds out of the north today. We are tapping into a cooler air mass, a little fresh this morning, but we are out of those single digits. We're up to 13 now, and partly cloudy over at Pearson Airport. You can expect to dip back down to cooler weather again overnight tonight. Lows near 8 degrees, so another cool start to Sunday, but lots of sunshine, like I said, and we're back to seasonal by Tuesday. Your guaranteed high today, 19 degrees.
680 News Time, 9:33.
Expect major routes out of the city to be packed today. It is the start of the first weekend since the province introduced Stage 2 of its COVID-19 reopening plan. It means you can finally grab a meal on a patio, get a buzz cut, or even take your child to a splash pad just as long as you're outside the GTA, Hamilton, or Niagara.
And the Ford government also announcing today it's expanding the limits for weddings and funerals, both indoors and outdoors. 680 Stuart McGinn joins us live with the latest. Stuart.
Leah, those are the areas where so-called Stage 1 and Stage 2 territories clash, and some are worried. It's just a quick drive over for those in the GTA that are being held back in the province's reopening. Sandy Brown is the mayor of Orangeville. It says he is not concerned about anyone coming to town to go to a nail salon or for a hair appointment.
Appointments are being booked out for several days now, and you have to wear a mask in the salon setting. So those ones really aren't a concern.
Despite his views, the public health unit for his region has made masks mandatory in all commercial settings, but Brown says it's important to remember masks aren't mandatory on patios, and people aren't coming to town to shop in stores that are already open in their neighborhoods. Regardless of these concerns, Premier Doug Ford says with how the numbers are tracking, it won't be long until the Greater Toronto-Hamilton region can rejoin the rest of the province in this stage of reopening.
We'll be able to open the 10 areas up very shortly based on the numbers in case there's a spike, because we have seen numbers go down and then spike up.
Meanwhile, new from the Ford government this morning pertaining to weddings and funerals. If they're being held outdoors, they can now have up to 50 people, while indoors they'll be capped at 30% of a venue's capacity. Still, though, receptions will be maxed out at groups of 10. Reporting live, Stuart McGinn, 680 News.
Demonstrators will once again take to the streets of Toronto today, calling for an end to systemic racism. 680's Joey Keeney takes a look.
You drink black coffee and they think you're crazy. It's everything.
Set for 1 o'clock at Christie Pitts, the Toronto chapter of Remember the 400 is holding a march to Queen's Park.
I've never heard of this
before. Gets its name from the 400 years that have passed since black slaves first landed on the shores of the Americas. They say their mission is to tell their story
Canada, and that was before that. You lying motherfucker.
And a unity march is happening at 12:30 at Malvern Town Center in Scarborough. That's being organized by Helping Neighborhoods Implement Change. Black Lives Matter Toronto and Not Another Black Life are not involved.
Are you serious? Helping Neighborhoods Implement, you mother.
Meantime, stateside police in Seattle are now barred by federal court from using tear gas against protesters, except in extreme circumstances.
A federal judge here in Seattle ordering that police can no longer use tear gas except when absolutely necessary because lives are in danger. And even then, it has to come with the approval of the chief of police. This is police here at lost control of the East Precinct. Occupiers control the area
bicycle cops, even highway patrol. Put them on a bicycle.
ABC News, Seattle.
We're on the honor system. I'm speeding and the bicycle cop pulls me over, I'll pull over, but if you're a prick,
people in Raptors gear today with their heads firmly placed in the clouds with a knowing smile on their face. 680's Bobby Bennett explains why.
Hard to believe it's been a whole run of the calendar since days.
Tandem bike, the two bike, make them fucking ride.
Today
you can't catch the people speeding. Settle faster, stupid. It's so simple. I want to tell you kids. You know how they talk to us?
This is the sound of the Sportsnet newsroom. 680 News digital guru Andrew Osmond still has this recording of himself watching with friends and family. Here's the thing, too. The Raptors were second in the East when COVID-19 interrupted play. They still have a good chance of repeating when the season finally resumes. I'm Simon Bennett.
And to mark the occasion, the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame Museum honoring the man that guided the Raptors through that title run in his very first year as an NBA head coach. 680's Phil Martino reports.
Nick Nurse made his way into our hearts.
He led the Toronto
Raptors to their first NBA championship, and now he can make his way into your living room. Phil Scollar, co-founder of the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum, says they've unveiled 4 limited edition bobbleheads featuring the Toronto Raptors head coach. One has a celebrating nurse waving a Canadian flag while holding a microphone in his other hand.
We put a lot of work into them to make sure they, look like Nick and, celebrated some of the best, most memorable moments. And each bobblehead in the series is individually numbered to only 2019.
Is it a big Jamaican woman? It's not a real nurse.
The bobbleheads sell for $30 US each or 4 for $100. I'm Phil Martino.
This is 680 News. Well, it's been a while since we've been able to attend a concert in person. Go to 680's Toronto Thor tells us there's an alternative way to take in a show tonight.
If you're anything like me, you're probably missing the loud, booming music in your ears and singing along with thousands of other people to your favorite songs. Well, while we can't be in a crowd right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is another way to get your concert fix. The third installment of...
Oh, well. Look at this song, you get extra royalties from these white people. Fuck off. What do they tell us? HNIC, really? Okay. 2014.
Yeah, shit, can't fuck with this. I ain't getting bail, so I run till they catch me. I ain't scared of y'all, so you won't have to dead me before I ever stop. I'm a giant in the fast lane. Get your toes the fuck out the way, cause this year I'm stomping on every day. Took the cocaine and now, way less till I'm on triple back. Fucking with you thick and playing boy. Got killers across the country, just waiting for the border.
Did I press it then? No, the fucking bug bit me and I fucking...
Mom, stand by. Send my condolences dead. Heard your man die. Got that good if you trying to get high. Just follow my lead and you will be fine. Yeah, I came from a place where it's easy to
my order, 0 item. Don't put an S on that one. If I put 1 and it says items, I'm gonna be pissed, eh?
Maybe one of my enemies feel
it will too, because this is Ontario.
Survival at all costs, whatever it takes. That's a zero limit mind state. No room for error, no room for mistake. I'm around, till they bury me. All that talking on your breath, they scaring me. Keep on pushing me, it's like you carry me. Like I won't pop, leaving that bleed. Ride, till they bury me. All that talking on your breath, they scaring me. Keep on pushing me, it's like you carry me. Like I won't pop, leaving that bleed.
Yeah, she never stayed in that one spot. It's on this side, facing to the glass. The glass ain't even thin, bitch. You bug me every time I see it. I would have never thought twice about it, and so she did it. If I never saw her do it, she did it. That poor table. When you leave the room, people that know different talk about your furniture, right? They'll never tell you because you have some story about how she's coming back. We talk about your furniture and tables and bullshit. Just turn it the other way so to have the respect that the public doesn't have to randomly see that. Look at that table with the... That's not one corner of that. This is not shuffling. That's not right.
Demons at the crossroads, body in the hook, you give a fuck with the crossroads. So we pop those shots, flows like my soul. Demons seeking the faithless people for lost souls. Already lost, so motherfucker, run red. If you see me as hostile, until they put my suit up, fill my pockets with dry roses. And I'm frozen in my last pose, and the box closes. I'm never faded, my echo will not load. I'm going no remorse, but I never be hollow. I pop chrome, turn more keys than a lock. Calling cops, put the key behind the chrome. And I roll colossal, city gripping on me like a lasso. My brain paint a perfect picture like Picasso. Lost the snow at the crossroads. Kids and shots with snow. We the lost soul. We lost soul. We the lost soul. When the box is low. Kids and shots with snow. We the lost soul. Motherfucker, we lost soul.
You're my brother, yeah. Free drama, free pain. Stand up, the place where I'm from. The cut of the slums. Yeah, my family destroyed by the drugs. On my face, straight to prison. Dear Lord, they call it sinning. We just call it living. Crib kids sitting up the fucking building. Ain't you rapping civilian? I plan to stack $1 million. Yeah, they keep on telling me I don't amount to shit. I just spin my ball and tell them they get real quick. I played the fifth, nah, I ain't see shit. He said he felt butterflies in his stomach. Like before we clothing. Now the body leaking blood getting colder. Send me free pay, my team make the front pay. These are troubled times, call it end of day. Be a hustler when the box is closed. And it's full with the rolls and the blocks is slow. At the crossroads, kids are chopping slow. Be the hustler, be hustler, be the hustler when the box is closed. And it's full with the rolls and the blocks is slow. At the crossroads, kids are chopping slow. Be the hustler, motherfucker, be hustler.
Might have run through the whole playlist. Don't matter.
Get your ass up out the car, nigga. Get the fuck out. Break yourself, nigga. Break yourself. Fuck you up on the streets. You need a GED, sell crack. Well, the working class sleeps. Live my life on the beat. No matter what I'ma eat. If I'm a rock for a plate, might as well make it the feast. I go hard till I'm in that box. A little baking soda mixed with cocaine. Now we cooking rocks. Can't sleep too many chops. I know these feelings me. Fuck them, let them watch. Satan's calling and we all on the clock. I have this dream. Every night it's the same. I'm on the beat. Shit run up and up. Tell me what this mean. You can call it greed. I call it get mine by any means. Yeah, the KID. AKA the Sandman. Putting to sleep like rockin' bye-bye, baby. Will the sun come up tomorrow? I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. Nothing lost this way. Walking looking nice to bed. Where they say, yeah, boy. Nothing lost this way. Nothing good here. All the virus pay. Yeah, boy. Nothing lost this way. Walking looking nice to bed. Where they say, yeah, boy. Nothing lost this way. Nothing good here. All the virus pay. Yeah, boy.
I was raised up west side, money motivated mind, team standing corners, holidays beyond the block and grind. I do this all the time, every day, you know I gotta ride. Money be a girl, say goodbye, cause now the bitch is mine. It's just another day, another crime, we live in the devil's way like renegade. Bunch of Tuesday crazies on the end of the day. Get on your knees and pray like you're about to meet the Lord today. Slowly starting to fade, lost, slipping into an unconscious state. You don't want that faith, living life in the hood is for the soldiers. Hold your fold up, take it, hold up.
Like, what am I doing? I did
might rob your whole family tree. Yeah,
I'm not well with all this fucking pain and blood.
Like me, I might rob your whole family tree. Yeah.
Get aboard, then last way. Walking with the glass, the red, red city. Get aboard, then last way. Nothing good here, all the time was play. Get aboard, then last way. Walking with the glass, the red city. Get aboard.
Roundup. Wait, what? Roundup? People are beginning to realize that it's cheaper and more advantageous to prevent disease rather than to cure it. Henry Lindler, whatever, 1862 to 1924. Thank you. This wise statement was written in 1913. Wow.
No, it was just in a weapon. Fuck away, crack with the subtle suggestions. Just patchy your death wish with the flipping west. Fucking with an ex-metal patient. I'm calling up the saint. Just creation of God, built and fall from heaven. I don't bleed the river, I ain't hearing the breeze. I'm in the belly of the beast, singing fuck the police. Yeah, fuck the police. Careful, just around here, they gotta see us in the grave. Then the shackles of chains, tied up on the legs. That's why I mean the devil we dance. And crack rock got the customers in the train. Get a gun jam, better run, probably on the chair. Yeah, so my soul from
Insomnia, why is it no sleep? Because I got a reason. I can't sleep. I'm not tired. Women are an answer for that one. Why are you?
Sweat feel beat in my chest. It seems I only breathe with a love for sex. The most of the time, I'm the walking dead. Rather than just living to die with emotions aside. Gangster with a black flag.
What would a woman with sickle cell? Nothing? That's not why I'm losing blood. Is that
hit him up and leave him dead. After the wake, I'm at his crib. Fucking his bitch and father in his cage. I'm probably burned for the way I live. Everywhere I go, I got a pocket full of six. Yeah, this is how it is. We're gonna vote it, I'ma die how I live. Yeah, the coach and the pirates. Time to get the soda off the fridge.
it's like all the diseases that are advertised
There's nothing nice about this game. So many homies in the game. Our only promise is this place. There's nothing nice about this game.
Oh, don't even.
Just another sad story of a life like mine. Little baby introduced to a world full of crime. You starve and survive, either live or you die. Put yourself in my shoes, tell me what would you decide? Just another sad story of a life like mine. Little baby introduced to a world full of crime. You starve and survive, either live or you die. Put yourself in my shoes, tell me what would you decide? Yes, it's me. My mother's corrupted saint. What a tragedy I had to be. My life is a teen. Mama told me to stay in school, but my stomach told me to eat. But the addiction kept us struggling, so I had to intervene. My daddy left, so I took the place where he was supposed to be. Nearly 12 without no watch, cause my siblings had to eat. My older brothers see me cancel everything. If I break and get the hard past the shirt for fame, teachers getting suspicious of the money stacked in my jeans. Dropped out of high school one because they called the police. No looking back at education. I was out in the streets, just another sentence to 10, corrupted from every change.
Most exertion malaise lasting more than 24 hours, really? Multi-joint pain without swelling or redness.
Tell me what would you decide? Just another sad story of a life like mine. Little baby introduced to a world full of crime. You starve to survive, you live or you die. Yourself in my shoes, tell me what would you decide?
Your child in the trenches on his grind, with a sheep still staring at the sky. Introduced to a life full of crime. He's got his mind on his money and no money on his mind. Got a demon inside, trying to tear him apart. Find peace in a place that be lonely and dark. Yeah, his mind is a mystery, like the sun and the stars. And not because he told me I would make it this far.
Why is no brand name? What the fuck?
Sweating till my knuckles raw. Come retrace my footsteps and see what I saw. Be where I've been. I wake up, I go to sleep. It's the same thing. I'm drinking liquor, so I'm
Omega-3 fatty acids are as effective. They are not. Okay, where you are. Oh, so much of that. I have the medical mafia up there. I think I pull that down.
I'm finding me hard to break. I wake up sweaty in my sheets, can't remember my dreams. I think the devil torture me every time that I go to sleep. I'm hearing echoes in my screen. God, what is it mean? Send an angel to rescue me because your son is to blame. Society is to blame for the monster that I became. And you both know that I pray for my forgiveness every day. I put my head up to the sky, keep a smile on my face. Essential human and a heart of gold that you can never break. I always kept my composure even in the darkest of days. Cause after every dark night I watch the sun when it rains. So on the forward to the future and I hope that I'm safe. If you would like the path for me, I would follow the way. I just want to live in faith. If I want family to be safe, so forgive me for my sins. All I've only better days.
What is this? Hey, hold on. What is this? Oh, this is nothing. Very dusty. The best books are dusty. There ain't no middle there. M.A. something I.A. Maria. Italian Maria.
Who's the awesome action? What it's like to be me? Is this the Nyneteen? We rip the competition apart. What's the conclusion? Pick a song. He played until he passed on. A grown man cried like a hoe. What a sad song.
This is what you do.
We gon' bang to the
That's a dead bird. Hold on. Why is one of the birds dead? That one's dead. That one looks like it's dying. What the fuck? That's wrong. I didn't see all that.
You can't blame me. You can't blame me. The nature of the beast, the nature of the beast, you can't blame me. Nature of the beast, nature of the beast, the nature of the beast. I'm dropping on deck, got my hand on my tech.
Fortini said the lawbreakers include 16 charges for large parking lot gatherings. A hair salon also illegally reopened, and people were charged with playing cricket, soccer, and volleyball. Well, the pandemic continues to push back major movie releases. Christopher Nolan's action thriller Tenet was going to be the first studio film back in theaters on July 17th, but now Warner Brothers has moved it back 2 weeks to July 31st. No official reason given for the move, but there's concern in the industry about whether or not people will show up when theaters fully reopen, and about how well a movie can do with theaters operating at limited capacity. So for now, Disney's Mulan will be the first major studio movie if it sticks with its July 24th release date. Warner Brothers also moving Wonder Woman 1984 from August to October. Jason Nichols of ABC News. Hollywood.
Rogers is working with over 150 hospitals across Canada, extending Wi-Fi coverage and raising donations for frontline workers to ensure the most important connections can always be made. Because that's how we'll move forward together.
Bad and pigs are good, right?
Donate today at frontlinefund.ca.
Book that little pig. They already did it. Pigs from in a can. They were put there by a man.
No commute, no daycare,
canceled
summer camps, the vacation you're not going on.
Why did you do it with my internet? There's no way my internet's actually going to touch the wires.
You spend on your home.
Yeah, but I still have viewers. I'll unplug the camera.